Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Agustina Imvinkelried. Agustina was born on June 6, 2001 in Esperanza. Agustina lived with her large family and as the youngest of 5 children, received special treatment. People described Agustina as friendly, kind, and always smiling. Like many young people, she enjoyed going to the movies, bowling, discos, and playing the ukulele with her friends. Esperanza is a small town of around 40,000 residents, where everyone tends to know each other. The limited entertainment options led to the town's young people frequently running into and knowing one another. On the afternoon of January 12, 2019, Agustina's father dropped her off at a friend's house, where a group of 6 planned to gather. The girls had arranged to visit a nightclub and bowling center called Teos together. Agustina told her father she would spend the night at a friend's house. After leaving the club, Agustina sent a message to her boyfriend, Nahuel, asking him to join her, but he declined, saying he was tired. At the club, Agustina and her friends were having a blast, dancing and enjoying the music. By 5 a.m., they decided it was time to head out, but Agustina ran into another group of friends and decided to stick around for a bit longer. A surveillance camera captured her leaving the venue at 5:40 a.m., carrying her cell phone. After leaving the club, Agustina stopped by a fast food stand, waited in line, chatted with an acquaintance, and then headed towards the road. Normally, Agustina's parents knew her whereabouts because she always kept them informed. However, when morning arrived and they didn't receive a text from her saying she had made it to her friend's house safely, they grew concerned and tried to reach her. But her phone was unavailable. Her friend told the worried parents that Agustina hadn't returned from the club. Agustina's parents then contacted all her acquaintances, but no one knew where she might be. As a result, Agustina's father called the police and began searching for his daughter on his own. Daniel Rinklevery, a well-known local figure and president of the town's soccer club, was also the owner of a small furniture manufacturing and sales company. When news broke that he was in distress, many townspeople volunteered to help with the search for his missing niece, Agustina. Agustina's friends turned to social media to spread the word about her disappearance, which eventually caught the attention of television news programs. As a result, the police launched an investigation, focusing on Teos Club, the last place Agustina was seen. They interviewed potential witnesses and reviewed surveillance footage, which showed Agustina walking towards the road, but didn't provide any further leads. The police then broadened their search, questioning residents living along the road and staff from nearby businesses. They hoped someone might have seen or heard something, no matter how insignificant, that could serve as a clue to Agustina's whereabouts. Brian, a friend of Agustina's, heard about her disappearance on social media. He saw the many posts about finding her and got in touch with her father, Daniel. Brian told Daniel that he had seen Agustina outside Teos Club at around 6 a.m. He was driving by and noticed her standing on the side of the road, talking to the driver of a silver car that had pulled over next to her. This was a few hundred meters from the club. Brian drove on, but quickly pulled out his phone and called Agustina to check on her. He asked if she was okay and if she needed a ride home. Agustina told him she was fine, and that the man driving the silver car had stopped to warn her that the road wasn't safe to walk on because of the risk of being hit by traffic. She accepted Brian's offer of a ride, saying she was on her way to a friend's house. Brian then turned his car around and headed back towards Teos Club. When he arrived, Agustina was no longer there, and neither was the silver car. Assuming she had gone with the driver, Brian continued to try calling her, but she did not answer. Concerned, he drove to the friend's house she had mentioned, but there was no sign of her. He continued to check his phone for updates, hoping to hear from her or see her posting on social media. After learning about Agustina's disappearance and the discovery of her body, Brian shared crucial information with the police, providing a potential lead on the silver car and its driver. This testimony added vital details to the timeline, helping investigators reconstruct Agostina's final moments. Brian had stopped at a nearby gas station, about a few hundred meters from where he last saw Agostina, to wait for her and fill up his car. When Agostina failed to show up 15 minutes later, Brian went to look for her but couldn't find her. His attempts to contact her were also unsuccessful, as she didn't answer. At the time, he didn't think much of it, assuming Agostina had gone directly to her friend's house and forgotten about their meeting. The primary clue in the investigation was the silver car. Although Brian couldn't identify the exact brand and model, he recalled it was an older vehicle. The driver might have been the last person to see Agostina, and it was possible that he was linked to her disappearance. When the police attempted to track Agostina's cell phone, they found that the last signal it transmitted was received by a tower located in the same neighborhood as Teo's club. Since the club was situated on the outskirts of town, surrounded by numerous vacant lots and fields, the search teams focused their search efforts in these areas. Of all the organizations along the road Agostina was walking on, only this particular gas station had installed surveillance cameras. Daniel suspected that Agostina might have passed by the gas station, given its proximity to her friend's house, and so he went there to review the footage and see if it had captured his daughter. The gas station attendant, a fellow father, sympathized with Daniel's concern and showed him the recording from that morning, which almost resulted in the attendant losing his job, as it was against the rules to share the footage with unauthorized individuals. The gas station owner was furious when he found out and fired the attendant on the spot. However, when the townspeople heard what had happened, they boycotted the gas station, taking their business elsewhere. This backlash forced the gas station owner to reconsider, and he eventually rehired the attendant, apologizing to him publicly in front of Esperanza. Daniel reviewed the gas station's camera footage, but didn't find his daughter on it. It seemed Agostina never made it there. However, the footage did show the same old silver Renault car Brian had described earlier. It drove past the gas station around the time Agostina was walking along the road. Daniel identified the car's owner as 39-year-old Pablo Trionfini, a municipal garbage collector who lived less than a kilometer away. Although he had no prior criminal record, Trionfini had caught the police's attention before. In 2017, his ex-wife reported him for domestic abuse, which led to a court order prohibiting him from contacting her. He was arrested again that year for violating that order. Not long after Daniel viewed the gas station's security footage, police officers arrived, unaware that Agostina's father had already seen it. They viewed the surveillance video and recognized the silver car. However, when they discovered that Daniel had seen the video before them, they feared a lynching might occur and rushed to Pablo Trionfini's house. Upon arrival, they found a crowd gathered in front of the house, shouting, "Where is Agostina?" The crowd dispersed when the police arrived, and one of the onlookers told the officers that Trionfini was inside. He had peeked out after hearing the shouting but fled back into the house and bolted the door when he saw the hostile crowd. Lacking probable cause for an unauthorized entry, the officers requested a search warrant. While waiting, they cordoned off the house to prevent Trionfini's escape. Around midnight, an officer decided to investigate the yard and found Pablo Trionfini deceased. The police rushed to help, but it was too late. Trionfini's death implicated him in Agostina's disappearance, but a search of his house and car yielded no evidence. By taking his own life, Trionfini had avoided further trouble and consequences. As the police were searching the house, Trionfini's neighbor approached them and said that Pablo had dropped by during the day and asked to borrow a shovel, allegedly to dig for some earthworms because he was going fishing. A half hour later, he returned the shovel and said something that struck the neighbor as very odd. Witnesses saw Trionfini leave the house several times on Sunday, riding his bicycle while holding a shovel. This possibly meant that Agostina was no longer among the living. On Monday, January 14, 2019, a search began at daybreak with the aid of drones and police dogs. At 9:15 a.m., Augustina's half-stripped body was discovered approximately 500 meters away from Teo's club. It had been concealed in a ditch covered with dense vegetation. The forensic examination showed that Augustina had fought desperately for her life. Her hands had defensive wounds, and pieces of her attacker's skin were found under her fingernails. DNA analysis verified that the man who assaulted Augustina was Pablo Trionfini. Forensics ruled the cause of death as strangulation. The exact circumstances of how Augustina ended up in Pablo Trionfini's car remain a mystery. Did he force her in, or did he simply offer her a lift? We will never know for certain, as the only two people who could provide answers are now deceased and unable to speak. A thorough search of Trionfini's phone revealed no evidence to suggest that he had any prior connection to Augustina. Hundreds of mourners attended Augustina Imbencariad's funeral to pay their respects, whereas, surprisingly, not even Pablo Trionfini's family members showed up to his own funeral, according to reports by Argentine media outlets. The case of Cani Alm. Cani Alm was born on July 18, 1974, in Malaysia. She was the younger of two daughters and enjoyed a very close relationship with her parents. In 1995, Cani moved to the United States to pursue higher education and a career in information technology. While living in the United States, Cani met a man named Brandon. He was a U.S. citizen and an ethnic Chinese whose parents emigrated from Singapore over 20 years ago. Initially, Cani and Brandon were just friends, but their friendship eventually blossomed into a romantic relationship. Brandon became a significant figure in Cani's life, supporting and helping her in various ways. They got married in 2001. Cani's life was on track in 2003. She was working as an analyst in San Diego, planning a future with her husband, and hoping to start a family. Her life changed dramatically that year. The trouble began when Cani's father, Ong Bai Yong, was diagnosed with cancer. Cani decided to fly to Malaysia to support her family during this difficult time. On June 1, 2003, Cani and her husband, Brandon, arrived in Malaysia. However, Brandon returned to the USA after a few days, leaving Cani to care for her father in Kuala Lumpur. Despite the distance, Cani and Brandon stayed close through daily phone calls. They would talk for hours, sharing stories about their daily lives, including their two pets. Cani's father underwent surgery to remove a kidney, but fortunately, his health began to recover. As he improved, Cani planned her return to the USA, scheduling a flight for June 14, 2003. Cani organized a farewell dinner at a local restaurant the evening before her departure, and she invited her mother, sister, and closest friends to join her. That evening, June 13, 2003, Cani and her mother arrived at the designated meeting spot later than the others. They had trouble finding a parking spot in front of the mall, so Cani parked in the underground lot. However, her mother was concerned about the poor lighting in the lot rather than the parking fee. Once they arrived at the second-floor restaurant, Cani was excited to reunite with her childhood friends, whom she hadn't seen in a long time. They spent a few hours catching up, but Cani soon noticed that her mother, Pearlie, was starting to look tired. When Cani asked if her mother wanted to head home, Pearlie said she had a lot to do that day, but was okay with leaving early and promised her friends she would be back soon. Cani, her mother, and her sister Elsie got up from the table to pay for their parking. They went to the payment terminal, which was located on the first floor, a floor above the underground parking lot. As they waited in line for the terminal, Cani realized she had left the parking ticket in their car. She asked her sister and mother to stay in line while she went back down to retrieve the ticket. Elsie and Pearlie waited for 10 more minutes, but Cani still hadn't returned. Then, her sister started calling her. The first call went unanswered, and the second one was sent to voicemail. This was unusual, and Elsie and Pearlie immediately sensed that something was wrong. They quickly went to the parking lot, where they were shocked to find that Kenny's car was no longer there. They searched the parking lot several times to make sure, and after confirming that the car was indeed gone, they realized that Kenny must have disappeared along with it. Pearlie was certain that something had happened to her daughter, as Kenny would never leave without saying anything. Although the parking lot was poorly lit, it had surveillance cameras that might provide some clues about what had happened. The mall security initially refused to show Kenny's relatives the footage, but relented after her mother begged for their help. At midnight, Pearlie and Elsie sat in front of a monitor and watched the shocking footage, which confirmed their worst fears. The footage revealed Kenny's car speeding out of the underground parking lot, crashing through the barrier. Although the footage quality was poor, it was evident that a man was driving, with Kenny in the passenger seat. Her body was positioned as if she was trying to distance herself from the driver, leaning against the door. Upon seeing the footage, Pearlie immediately filed the disappearance and kidnapping report at a police station. The police launched an investigation, while Kenny's family and friends drove around Kuala Lumpur, desperately searching for her purple proton tiara. Meanwhile, Brandon, Kenny's husband, began to feel a sense of unease. He tried calling his wife multiple times, but she didn't answer. He then contacted her mother, who informed him about the events that had transpired. The news of Kenny's disappearance left Brandon in shock. Pearlie could hear him sobbing over the phone. As dawn broke, Kenny's friends and family reluctantly returned home, their search efforts having yielded no results. The police disseminated information about the disappearance and conducted their own search, but unfortunately, it didn't lead to any breakthroughs. Even the footage from the mall's parking lot where Kenny was kidnapped failed to provide any leads on identifying the driver of the car. More than 72 hours have passed since Kenny's loved ones last saw her. Authorities believe that if she was kidnapped, it wasn't for ransom. If money was the motive, the kidnapper would have demanded it by now. A disturbing find was made by police when they discovered Kenny's car left empty on a city street. The front right tire was severely damaged, indicating it had been driven on while flat for some time, causing it to shred. In the back of the car, a large red stain was found on the passenger seat. Forensic experts collected evidence, including scrapings from the back seat, fingerprints from the steering wheel, and other parts of the car. There were many clues found in the vehicle. Kenny's family and friends held on to hope and prayed for her safe return. However, their hopes were crushed the next day after her car was found. On June 17th, a road worker detected a strong, foul smell coming from a manhole near the highway. Upon lifting the lid, he discovered a body that someone had attempted to burn using 2 car tires and sticks. A team of leading forensic experts from the Royal Malaysian Police immediately arrived at the scene. They found 2 car tires filled with concrete, which had been used as stands for road signs, lying on top of the body. It appeared that whoever had hidden the body, trying to make it harder to identify. Although the discovery of the body seemed to confirm the family's worst fears, Kenny's mother, Pearlie, refused to believe that her daughter was dead without official confirmation. "Until they confirm it, we will continue to hope that she will turn up alive," she said. The family went to the morgue, but the doctor said that they couldn't confirm the identity of the body yet. Kenny's family members provided DNA samples for comparative analysis. Unfortunately, the results confirmed their worst nightmare. The body was indeed that of their daughter, Kenny. Some sources claim that before the DNA test results, Kenny's family identified the jewelry on the body. However, as a loving mother, Pearlie held on to the hope that her daughter was still alive until the very end. The emotional torture she endured is unimaginable. The autopsy revealed that Kenny had 2 stab wounds to her abdomen, and a medical forensics expert found signs of strangulation. A cloth was tied around her neck in multiple knots, and semen was found inside her body, which served as a source of DNA. A few days after the body was discovered, an incident raised questions about the work of police. An undercover policeman, Subramaniam Ravichandran, reported to his superiors that on the night of Kani's disappearance, he was on duty with his partner, patrolling the streets of Kuala Lumpur at night on their motorcycles. Both officers were dressed in civilian clothes. They noticed a car parked incorrectly, taking up half the road, and stopped to investigate if anyone was inside. Ravichandran approached the driver's door and saw a man behind the wheel with a woman in the passenger seat. He knocked on the window, and when the man lowered it partially, Ravichandran displayed his police ID and asked what they were doing. The driver replied they were just chatting and not doing anything illegal. Ravichandran then requested to see their IDs. As the driver handed over the documents, she in the passenger seat made unusual hand gestures, seemingly asking for help, but stopped whenever her assumed boyfriend looked at her. Noticing this, Ravichandran asked the driver to step out of the car. However, the driver responded aggressively, claiming Ravichandran was not a police officer but a thief. He then raised the window and reached for the ignition. Realizing the car might drive off, Ravichandran drew his pistol and shot the right front wheel. Despite this, the car sped away. Ravichandran and his partner pursued on a motorcycle but were unable to catch up, which is puzzling given the car had a flat tire. At the time, the Malaysian Police Department was in a state of disarray, which might explain why the officer didn't call for backup or report the incident. The car with a flat tire was a purple Proton Tiara, driven by 27-year-old Ahmad Najib bin Aris, accompanied by a woman named Kani Alm. Although the police chase did not result in an immediate arrest, the officers managed to obtain documents from the driver. Tragically, Kani Alm was later found dead. It is possible that if the officer had acted differently during the encounter, the outcome might have been different. Unfortunately, Ravichandran only informed his superiors about the incident after Kani's body was discovered. The only positive outcome of that night was that the police had obtained documents that could help identify the suspect. Besides Kani's family, many Malaysians attended her farewell ceremony. Her death was a devastating loss for her husband, Brandon. Meanwhile, the police launched a search for Ahmad Najib. They discovered that he didn't live at the address listed in his documents, but his name was genuine, providing multiple leads to track him down. The police searched for Ahmad Najib's name in the Registry of Documented Marriages and the National Agency of Social Support. They found a match, revealing that Ahmad Najib bin Aris was born and raised in Muar, Malaysia. He was the second of 4 siblings and had dropped out of school to work and support his family. In 1998, he moved from Muar to Kuala Lumpur, where he got married and had 2 children. Since 2000, he had worked as a cabin cleaner for Malaysia Airlines. Knowing the name of Ahmad Najib's wife and her workplace, the police began surveillance. She worked at a metropolitan bank, and after her shift ended, undercover police officers followed her to determine her home address. Now that they knew where Ahmad Najib lived, the police had to ensure he was inside the house without alerting him. For 3 days, they monitored the house, but Ahmad Najib didn't appear. At one point, investigators doubted whether Ahmad Najib still lived with his family, but this was a hasty conclusion. On the 4th day of surveillance, at around 4 a.m., a cab pulled up to the house, and Ahmad Najib stepped out. Within a minute, he was handcuffed and taken to the police station for questioning. News of the arrest and the suspect's identity quickly reached the press. Many people who knew Ahmad Najib were shocked to learn that he was suspected of kidnapping and killing Kani Alm. Those who knew him described Ahmad Najib as a devoted husband, a caring father of 2, and an overall good person. However, investigators soon discovered that he may have been hiding a darker side. During the initial interrogation, Ahmad Najib remained calm and requested to speak only with the head of the Criminal Investigation Division. It wasn't until he was presented with evidence linking him to Kani that Ahmad Najib began to deny any wrongdoing. His confidence seemed to wane as the evidence mounted. Investigators showed him 2 IDs that he had given to an officer on the night of Kani Ong's kidnapping. They also revealed that they had found bloodstains on his jacket and jeans, which DNA analysis would likely confirm to be Kani Ong's blood. After realizing the officers had solid evidence and were not bluffing, Ahmad Najib confessed to kidnapping and killing Kani Ong. Within 10 days of the kidnapping, on June 23, 2003, he was taken to court, where he repeated his confession. The police then conducted an investigative experiment where Ahmad Najib showed them all the locations he had been with Kani Ong. He provided a detailed account of how he forced her to be intimate with him multiple times, how he took her life, and how he attempted to dispose of her body. Evidence supporting his statements was found at all the locations he led the police to. The investigation began at the underground parking lot, where cameras captured footage of Ahmad Najib. According to his statement, he was waiting for his former boss, who had fired him and whom he sought revenge against. However, the claim about the former boss was never verified. Hiding in the darkness, he observed Kani Ong searching for something in her car and seized the opportunity to take advantage of the situation. He forcefully pushed her into the car, issuing threats that if she attempted to escape or seek help, she would face dire consequences. Overwhelmed, Kani Ong became disoriented and obediently followed his instructions. Next, he took the driver's seat and sped out of the parking lot. After crashing through a barrier, he stopped in an industrial area, where he began to harass Kani Ong. Just as this was happening, a plainclothes police officer approached the car. Ahmad Najib falsely told the officer that he didn't know he had taken the wrong person until the officer asked him and his victim for their identification. Even assuming Ahmad Najib had intended to kidnap his former boss, his guilt remains unchanged. Undoubtedly, his former boss would have suffered the same fate as Kani Ong. According to Ahmad Najib's account, he managed to evade the pursuing officer. Despite the officer possessing his documents, Ahmad Najib failed to consider releasing Kani Ong. Instead, he stopped the car on the street to replace a tire damaged by a bullet. Nearby, a car containing a woman was parked at the spot where he had pulled over. He approached she and asked for a car jack, intending to change his tire. However, he noticed Kani Ong signaling to she, who then handed him the jack. He abandoned the idea of changing the tire and drove off immediately. Later, he stopped at a secluded area and used a knife to threaten Kani Ong, forcing her to engage in intimate acts with him. Afterwards, he drove to another district where he coerced Kani Ong into satisfying him again, with both of them in the back seat. Kani Ong pleaded for mercy, but he took her life instead. He then disposed of her body in a manhole near a highway, moved the car to another location, and left it there. 16 hours later, he returned to the scene with a gasoline canister in an attempt to conceal evidence of the crime. DNA analysis confirmed that the semen found in Kani Ong's body belonged to Ahmad Najib bin Aris. His DNA was also discovered in the car, along with his fingerprints, providing further irrefutable proof of his guilt. Additionally, the analysis revealed that the blood on his jacket and jeans belonged to Kani Ong. The trial began on September 15, 2003, 3 months after Kani Ong's death. This high-profile case drew widespread attention from the Malaysian media and public. The trial attracted not only ordinary Malaysians and journalists but also individuals seeking to boost their reputation, including numerous attorneys representing Ahmad Najib. Despite admitting guilt during the investigation, overwhelming evidence, including DNA proof, Ahmad Najib changed his stance after consulting 6 attorneys. At his first trial, he claimed his confession was made under police pressure. However, the judge before whom Ahmad Najib confessed immediately after his arrest testified that there were no signs of physical abuse, and Ahmad Najib appeared calm and relaxed. The attorneys then shifted their strategy, arguing that Kani Alm was in the car with Ahmad Najib voluntarily. They suggested that Kani Alm, a black belt in Taekwondo, should have attempted to escape if she were being held against her will. However, this attempt to blame Kani Alm was rejected, as people respond differently to critical situations. However, another claim surfaced, stating that Kani Alm had consensual intimacy with Ahmad Najib and that Kani Alm's death was caused by strangulation used to heighten the experience. Forensic experts disagreed with and rejected this account of what happened. The cloth around Kani's neck was tied in multiple knots, suggesting that Kani Alm had no intention of loosening it. Indeed, the cloth was so tight that the skin beneath was the only area on the body not affected by the fire. Furthermore, the cloth was a type used for cleaning plane windows, and given the defendant's job as a cabin cleaner, this linked him more closely to the crime. Additionally, the lawyers struggled to explain the stab wounds on Kani's body. At this point, Ahmad Najib's attorneys advised him to remain silent and not testify. Many questioned why Kani didn't escape the car when she had at least 2 chances to do so. On February 23, 2005, Ahmad Najib bin Aris was convicted of all charges connected to the crime committed against Kani Alm. The evidence pointed to him as the sole perpetrator. Ahmad Najib received the maximum sentence under Malaysian law, 20 years imprisonment and 10 strokes of the cane for violating Kani Alm's sexual integrity, plus the death penalty for causing her death. In Malaysia, the death penalty is carried out by hanging, a method that differs significantly from the lethal injection used in some other countries, such as the USA. Ahmad Najib's lawyers attempted to appeal the sentence twice but were unsuccessful both times. In 2010, Ahmad Najib petitioned the head of state to commute his death sentence to life imprisonment, maintaining his innocence. However, his plea for clemency was rejected. More than 13 years after Kani Alm's death, on September 23, 2016, Ahmad Najib's sentence was carried out. He was 40 years old at the time of his execution. The case of Adrienne Robert. Adrienne Robert was born on January 4, 1983, in Brunswick, Maine. She graduated from Leavitt High School in Maine in 2001 and the University of Maine at Augusta in 2005. 2 years later, in 2007, she relocated from Maine to Clearwater, Florida. Those who knew her described Adrienne as a beautiful, kind person, always happy and vibrant. At the time of her disappearance, Adrienne was in a relationship with her boyfriend, Justin, and they were planning to start a life together. She was renting a house with her friend Jay. As their relationship progressed, Adrienne and Justin found a new house in July 2012, where they intended to move in together. On the evening of July 13, 2012, Adrienne decided to throw a goodbye party before moving out. Adrienne told Justin that she and Jay would be going out to a movie or a bar. Justin couldn't join them because he was busy with some other things. He didn't object to Adrienne spending the evening with Jay, as they were close friends. Initially, Adrienne and Jay celebrated at home, reminiscing about good times and having a few drinks. Later, they decided to continue the night out and went to the Diamond Doll strip club. Jay called 911 at 3:34 a.m. to report that he had found his roommate, Adrienne, unresponsive. He told the operator that they had been at a nightclub earlier, but Adrienne had left before him. When Jay arrived home, he discovered Adrienne on the bathroom floor, her eyes open but not breathing. There were also signs of a struggle, suggesting a crime had taken place. The 911 operator instructed Jay to focus and perform CPR on Adrienne, guiding him through the process. Jay followed the instructions, attempting to revive Adrienne until the paramedics arrived. Unfortunately, By the time the ambulance arrived, Adrienne was deceased, and the medics were unable to help her. She was pronounced dead at the scene. The police investigation aimed to answer two key questions: who was responsible for Adrienne's death, and was her roommate involved? The police began by thoroughly searching the house, checking every closet and under every bed to ensure the perpetrator was not hiding inside. Detectives and forensic experts observed that there were no signs of forced entry on the front door when they first arrived at the crime scene. Adrienne's body was found on the bathroom floor, wearing only a bra. A stab wound to the chest was the cause of death. The signs of a struggle in the bathroom suggested that Adrienne had tried to defend herself, leading detectives to suspect that the killer was a man. The detectives had to wait for the autopsy results to get more information. While searching Adrienne's bedroom, they noticed that someone had cut off a piece of her bed sheet. It seemed like the killer was trying to destroy evidence, possibly to eliminate any DNA they may have left behind. However, it was puzzling that the killer didn't take the entire sheet, as the remaining part could still contain DNA. Further investigation revealed a substance similar to seminal fluid on the sheet, which was sent to the lab for analysis. Additionally, Adrienne's car was missing from the parking lot next to her house, suggesting that the killer may have stolen it. The police launched an investigation into the crime, searching for potential witnesses and issuing an alert for the victim's car. To piece together the events surrounding Adrienne's death, detectives needed to gather as much information as possible about her final hours. Before proceeding, however, they had to break the devastating news to her family. Adrienne's parents were stunned by the revelation, struggling to come to terms with the loss of their beloved daughter. Justin discovered the shocking truth the morning after, when he saw police surrounding her house. He immediately sensed something was terribly wrong. The detectives then broke the devastating news: Adrienne had been killed the previous night. Given that perpetrators often return to the crime scene, and Justin's close relationship with Adrienne, the detectives felt compelled to investigate him as a potential suspect. In cases like this, it's standard procedure to investigate the people closest to the victim first. Later that day, police found Adrienne's car abandoned just a few blocks away from her house, with the headlights still on and the keys in the ignition. This discovery further supported the investigators' initial theory that the killer had likely used Adrienne's car to escape the crime scene. Forensic experts thoroughly searched the interior of Adrienne's car for any clues that could help crack the case. Meanwhile, investigators reviewed the CCTV footage to identify the person who was driving the car. Although there were no cameras at the exact location where the police found the car, neighboring buildings had cameras that captured footage of the area. After examining the recordings, investigators spotted a man wearing shorts, a baseball cap, and long hair. The man was seen walking away from Adrienne's car around the same time the 911 call was made. He was heading in the opposite direction, which made it essential for investigators to track his next move. Unfortunately, their attempt to follow him was thwarted when they discovered that he turned a corner where there was no surveillance camera. The investigators rewatched the footage multiple times, hoping to pick up on a detail they might have missed initially. The police had difficulty gathering clear information about the man in the recording because it was taken at night. However, interviewing witnesses provided new leads. A neighbor reported seeing Adrienne and a man running past his house on the sidewalk at night. This was unusual for two reasons. It was late, and they didn't appear to be going for a run. Adrienne was wearing a dress and holding her shoes, while the man was not dressed in athletic attire. Although the situation seemed suspicious, Adrienne didn't appear to be in distress, as she wasn't screaming or calling for help. As a result, the neighbor didn't think much of the incident at the time. To reconstruct the events leading up to the 911 call, investigators spoke with Adrienne's roommate, Jay. Jay had gone to the club with Adrienne and claimed to have found her on the bathroom floor. During questioning, Jay told the detective that he and Adrienne had a few drinks at home before heading to Diamond Dolls, a club they often visited to unwind and escape their daily problems. Jay told investigators that he and Adrienne walked to Diamond Dolls because they had been drinking and didn't want to drive. The police focused on the club because it attracted a questionable crowd. Jay claimed they arrived around 10:30 p.m. and stayed for several hours. While they were sitting at a table, a stranger with a beard and a baseball cap joined them. Later, Adrienne decided to leave, and Jay said he stayed behind. He noticed the stranger had also left. To verify Jay's story, investigators reviewed the club's surveillance footage. They found a camera with a wide angle that recorded everyone entering and leaving the club that evening. The footage showed Jay and Adrienne arriving at the club, appearing calm and normal. Another camera at the entrance provided a clear view of people's faces and clothing. CCTV footage confirmed Jay's account of events. It shows him leaving the club alone at 2:53 a.m. and walking towards his house. The footage also reveals that Adrienne left the club earlier, at 1:38 a.m. Notably, she was seen wearing a dress and what appeared to be a jacket when she arrived at the club, but only wore the dress when leaving. This discrepancy raises a key point. Shortly after Adrienne departed, a man wearing a baseball cap rushed out of the club, presumably to return the jacket she had left behind. After returning the jacket, the man and Adrienne appeared to be engaged in conversation. The exact topic of their discussion remains unclear. Rather than returning to the club, the man followed Adrienne. After exiting the parking lot, they turned right onto a relatively isolated street with few houses. It is unclear whether Adrienne felt threatened or uneasy at this point, and this may remain uncertain. After reviewing the evidence, investigators determined that the man seen on camera at the club and the man near Adrienne's abandoned car were two different individuals. Based on the circumstances surrounding her death, they believed the man from the club's CCTV footage was the likely culprit. The other man may have been an innocent bystander. The police were exploring all possible scenarios to provide answers to Adrienne's parents as soon as possible. Adrienne's family traveled to Florida to collect her belongings. Investigators met with her parents, Mark and Dolores, and assured them that they would do everything possible to find and bring the perpetrator to justice. According to her parents, Adrienne was a friendly person with no known enemies. She had a good relationship with her boyfriend, Justin, and her roommate, Jay. Investigators suspected that Adrienne did not know her killer. The laboratory report soon arrived, revealing that male DNA was found on the sheet, Adrienne's body, and the walls. Although the killer had attempted to destroy evidence by cutting out part of the sheet, forensic experts were still able to recover the DNA. However, when the investigators compared the DNA to the database, they were disappointed to find no matches. As a result, the police had the DNA of an unknown suspect in CCTV footage from the club where Adrienne spent her last evening. Detectives focused on the footage as the key to solving the case. They re-examined the recordings, this time reviewing both daytime and nighttime footage, which led to a breakthrough. Approximately 8 hours before Adrienne's death, investigators spotted the same man who had been talking to Adrienne in the parking lot and had left with her. This time, they got a clearer view of his face. To determine how the unknown man arrived at the club, investigators reviewed the footage and saw that he had taken a taxi. The taxi's phone number was visible on the recording, making it easy to identify the taxi company. This new information made it simpler to identify the man. Detectives discovered that the phone number that ordered the taxi was caught on footage near Diamond Dolls, and it belonged to Thomas Frederick. By comparing his driver's license photo with the image of the man on the CCTV footage, detectives confirmed that it was the same person. As a result, Thomas Frederick became the primary suspect in the case. The police required concrete evidence to arrest Frederick, but the surveillance footage alone was insufficient. To gather more evidence without alerting him, they began secretly monitoring his activities. Their goal was to obtain his DNA sample discreetly, as they were concerned that approaching him directly might scare him off. For a week and a half, the officers tracked Frederick's movements, following him to work and keeping a watchful eye on his home at night. Their patience eventually paid off when Frederick discarded a cigarette butt on the road. The officers collected the butt and sent it to a laboratory for DNA analysis. The purpose of the test was to determine if Frederick's DNA matched the samples found at the residence of Adrienne Robert. While waiting for the test results, the police continued to secretly monitor Frederick, as they suspected he might attempt to leave the state at any moment. After receiving the laboratory report, everyone's anticipation was met with an unsurprising conclusion. The DNA analysis revealed that the samples found on the sheet, walls, and Adrienne's body all belonged to Thomas Frederick. As a result, the police arrested and brought him in for questioning. During the interrogation, Frederick claimed to be a frequent visitor to various clubs and bars, where he would often meet new people. When shown a picture of Adrienne, he stated that they had met at Diamond Dolls, where she had bought him a drink and they had danced and talked. However, when the police confronted him with CCTV footage that contradicted his alibi, he changed his story. Frederick then claimed that he and Adrienne had walked together to the end of the street before parting ways. When asked if he had ever visited Adrienne's house, Frederick responded that he couldn't remember due to his intoxication. This inconsistency cast doubt on his entire account, leaving it unclear what he was trying to conceal. The man initially claimed he had no recollection of being at Adrienne's house. However, it was revealed that a witness had seen Adrienne running barefoot while the man chased after her, which suggested that he was lying. When questioned by the investigators, Frederick provided an explanation. He claimed that Adrienne asked him to escort her home and that she began running suddenly after deciding she was in a hurry. She took off her shoes, prompting him to chase after her in order to stay by her side. Despite Frederick's shifting story, detectives uncovered compelling evidence. A DNA test showed that Frederick's DNA was on Adrienne's sheet and numerous items throughout her home. Frederick altered his story after receiving the DNA test results. Now he's claiming self-defense when confronted about his inconsistent explanations. Suddenly remembering past events he couldn't previously recall, Frederick finally shared an apparently factual narrative about how things actually occurred. They spent an intimate time in Adrienne's home where things ultimately became grim and both engaged. A confrontation between Adrienne and Thomas Frederick turned violent and resulted in a physical fight. During the altercation, Adrienne pulled out a knife and threatened Frederick, who then defended himself. Unfortunately, Adrienne was fatally injured in the process. After the incident, Frederick panicked and fled the scene instead of calling for emergency assistance. He feared being blamed for Adrienne's death. As a result, Frederick was charged with first-degree deprivation of life and appeared in court in January 2014. During the trial, the prosecutor presented a different account of the events. According to the prosecution, Adrienne and her friend Jay had been drinking at home before heading to Diamond Dolls, where they met Frederick. The three of them socialized and chatted casually. However, the next day, Adrienne decided to leave the club early to move into her new home with her partner, Justin. Frederick allegedly took advantage of the situation and followed her, despite her attempts to evade him. He chased her to her home, broke in, and attacked her with a knife from the kitchen. The prosecutor stated that the injuries on Adrienne's body suggested that she was forced to have intercourse with Frederick. Fearing she would report him to the police, Frederick decided to kill her. In an attempt to cover his tracks, he cut out a portion of the sheet where his semen had stained, but this effort was unsuccessful. The police were still able to find his DNA on multiple surfaces, including Adrienne's body. Frederick then took Adrienne's car keys, drove a short distance, and abandoned the vehicle. During the medical examiner's testimony, Adrienne's parents, Mark and Dolores Robert, left the courtroom, unable to bear the details of their daughter's final moments. Mark Robert later explained, "I didn't want to hear that. It won't bring Adrienne back, and I didn't want to know what she endured." It was clear that Adrienne had put up a fierce struggle. Her parents have since struggled to cope with life without their daughter. The grieving family member acknowledged that the healing process would be a long and difficult one. "We're still reeling from the loss of our loved one, and it will take time to recover," Dolores said. "However, we will eventually rebuild our lives, as that's what Adrienne would have wanted. It won't be easy, but we will get through this." During the trial, the defense team attempted to tarnish Adrienne's reputation by claiming that she had invited Thomas Frederick to her home for consensual sex. However, this assertion is baseless and may have been a desperate attempt by the perpetrator to justify his presence at the victim's house. The evidence, however, tells a different story. The presence of DNA points to one person, Thomas Frederick. The defense also claimed that Frederick acted in self-defense. She did sustain a stab wound as he was fighting her. Thomas Frederick was found guilty of first-degree murder and car theft. His claim of self-defense was rejected due to insufficient evidence. Although he was accused of killing Adrienne, there was no evidence to suggest he forced her into a sexual act by threatening her with a knife. Thomas Frederick, 25, was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Adrienne's father expressed relief and satisfaction with the verdict, stating that while it wouldn't bring his daughter back, justice had been served. He found it difficult to remain calm in the presence of the man who murdered his daughter, especially since Frederick showed no remorse or sympathy, even after the verdict was read. Adrienne's parents, Mark and Dolores Robert, were overcome with emotion in the courtroom, but felt a sense of relief and happiness when the verdict was announced. They remembered their daughter, a always happy and lively person whose smile could light up a room, and expressed sadness that they would never see her again. The case of Shannon Starbuck. Shannon Starbuck, a 42-year-old woman, was born on April 19, 1969, in Anderson, Indiana, as the youngest child with two older brothers. Her parents eventually divorced and started new families, resulting in additional siblings for Shannon. On December 3, 2011, Shannon was discovered on the floor of her bedroom, positioned in a suggestive manner. An erotic massager was placed on her stomach, indicating a clear attempt to humiliate her after death. The police immediately suspected foul play due to the numerous bruises and scrapes on her body. A medical examiner later confirmed that some of the injuries were caused by a stun gun, and evidence suggested that her body had been moved. The official cause of death was determined to be strangulation. The detectives assigned to solve the case faced a difficult task. They needed to reconstruct the final hours of Shannon's life and identify the perpetrator. Shannon, a mother of 5, had been reported missing by her ex-husband, Clay Starbuck, a day before her body was found. Clay, 47, had alerted the authorities that he had been unable to contact Shannon since December 1st at approximately 3 p.m. Shannon sent a text to her daughter, saying she couldn't pick up the kids from school because she wasn't feeling well. She asked them to wait for their father, claiming she had already informed him of the change in plans. However, his phone was turned off, so he didn't know what was going on. The younger siblings, Marshall and Serena, were tired and hungry, so 15-year-old Logan decided to call her older brother Austin for help. She asked him to drive them to their father's house, which was just a couple of blocks away. When they arrived, Austin said he couldn't reach their mother either. He thought maybe she had turned off her phone to rest. Austin put the kids in the car and drove them to their father's house. Clay was surprised to see them but was happy to spend time with his kids. Since the older kids had lived with him after the divorce, and the younger ones had stayed with their mother, Clay decided to enjoy the unexpected visit and didn't contact Shannon. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened with her. Clay expected to see Shannon at the school basketball game that evening, but she didn't show up. The next day, December 2nd, Clay took the kids to school and then went to Shannon's house. The front door was locked and the blinds were closed. Since he didn't have a spare key, he couldn't get in. Clay sent a message saying that if Shannon didn't show up by 7 p.m., he would contact the police. After waiting until the agreed time, Clay went to the police station to report Shannon Starbuck's disappearance. 2 sheriff's deputies visited her address but found nothing suspicious, so they returned to the station. The officer told Clay to wait one more day. If he still hadn't heard from Shannon after that, he should return to the station. The next day, Clay returned to the police station, and it was then that he discovered he wasn't the only one looking for Shannon. A friend and her mother had also reported being unable to contact her, which was unusual for Shannon. This new information prompted the police to take the case more seriously. It had been 48 hours since Shannon's disappearance, and several people were worried about her. The police visited Shannon's home again. Upon entering the residence, they found no signs of forced entry or robbery. Initially, everything appeared to be in order. However, when they entered Shannon's bedroom, they discovered the disturbing truth. Shannon Starbuck's disappearance was a result of a brutal murder. In her room, investigators found an unmade bed with a blanket nearby, but the sheet was missing and the mattress cover had red stains. Her cell phone and diary were on the dresser. Forensic experts examined the room for fingerprints, finding 12 latent prints on the massager box and bathroom mirror, while some surfaces had been wiped clean. DNA analysis was conducted on traces found in common areas, and specialists took scrapings from under Shannon's nails, face, and neck. Detectives believed the murder occurred after Shannon got out of the shower, and her body was moved to the bed and then the floor. The missing sheet was found in a washing machine, suggesting the perpetrator tried to eliminate evidence. Clay arrived at Shannon's house by noon to find out what had happened to his ex-wife. However, the scene at her yard was ominous, with yellow tape cordoning off the area, an ambulance, and several police cars parked near the lawn. Clay was the first to be informed of the tragic event. To gather more information about Shannon and her lifestyle, the detectives questioned Clay after he had calmed down. He explained that he and his ex-wife had a morning routine where he would take the younger kids to school and she would pick them up afterwards. However, on December 1st, his car broke down a few blocks from home, disrupting their routine. Clay had texted Shannon to ask her to take the kids to school. It was supposed to warm up around 11 a.m., but when he tried to start the car again, it still wouldn't start. He gave up and went back inside to take a nap. Clay slept for several hours without being disturbed, during which time his cell phone ran out of battery. To support his story, he showed the police his correspondence with his ex-wife, Shannon. Initially, everything seemed to add up. Clay was cooperative, providing his cell phone, DNA, and fingerprints. He also expressed concern for Shannon, explaining that their divorce had made her more vulnerable. When asked for more information, Clay revealed that Shannon had joined a dating site after becoming single. As an attractive woman, she had many admirers. According to Clay, she might have been seeing multiple people at the same time, and one of them might have been responsible for her death. Unfortunately, he didn't have any specific names to share. During the conversation, Clay became emotional and cried, struggling to accept Shannon's death. After recording his statement, the police sent him home. He had to break the news of their mother's death to their children. At the start of the investigation, the case surrounding Shannon Starbuck's demise was gathering momentum. Investigators questioned the Shannon family's neighbors, focusing on every detail, especially reports of unfamiliar people and vehicles in recent weeks. An autopsy revealed severe injuries, including chest trauma consistent with the use of a stun gun, 10 broken ribs, and head and body injuries likely caused by a blunt object. The severity of the injuries made it difficult to determine the exact time of death, but the expert estimated that Shannon's life ended between December 1st and 2. Scratches on her body suggested that she had been moved, and her broken neck bones supported this theory. The medical examiner found evidence of strangulation using a soft object, possibly a hand, towel, or sheet. A breakthrough in the case came from the analysis of body samples, which revealed male DNA. This suggested that the suspect might be one of Shannon's close male acquaintances, including her ex-husband or secret admirers. Clay Starbuck, her ex-husband, has cooperated fully with the investigation, including undergoing a medical examination to check for any injuries or harm. Detectives suspected that the perpetrator might have been injured during the struggle, but Clay showed no signs of injury on his hands. The investigators then examined their sons, 21-year-old Austin and 18-year-old Blake. The only issue that arose was the presence of old cuts on the older son's hands, but these were explained by his job at a window manufacturing plant. During conversations with the sons, some facts were established that would later become clearer. The children knew that after the divorce, their mother had been dating and they disapproved of it. They had seen explicit photos on their mother's laptop, leading them to wonder if she might have been targeted by an online predator. It was clear that the sons loved their mother and were deeply shaken by her death. However, they had disagreed with the changes she had been making in her life. In a subsequent interview, Clay expressed himself more clearly. He blamed Shannon's behavior for his family's problems while he was away on business, especially her frequent encounters with other men. Clay even suspected that Marshall might not be his biological son, but he loved him regardless. Clay believed that after their relationship ended, Shannon started to indulge excessively and not appropriately for her age. He disapproved of her dropping off the kids at his place when she went on dates. By this point, investigators had not only spoken to Clay and the children, but also interviewed Shannon's relatives and friends. The detectives developed a more comprehensive understanding of the deceased and her family. Shannon had always dreamed of having a big, loving family. Growing up, she was a kind and modest person who loved to draw and was very good at it, winning many awards. At 20, she met 25-year-old Clay Starbuck in Florida, where she had moved with her family when she was young. Clay was on vacation from Alaska. They were introduced by friends at a party and hit it off right away. That night, Shannon learned a lot about Clay. He had gone to school in Colorado to learn about diesel mechanics and later worked on the Trans-Alaskan pipeline, which paid well. However, he was already married with 2 kids. Despite his complicated past, Shannon wasn't discouraged. She actually saw it as a plus, thinking it gave him valuable experience for their future together. Shannon and Clay got married soon after meeting. As Clay's new wife, she moved in with her husband. At first, she struggled to adjust to her new surroundings and the weather, but she quickly settled in. Shannon's married life wasn't as perfect as she had envisioned. Her husband Clay was often away, leaving her to manage the household by herself. However, her love for him gave her the strength to carry on, knowing that his work shifts would eventually end and he would return to her. In the meantime, she took on the role of mother to his children from his previous marriage and soon gave birth to their own son, Austin, followed by another son, Blake, 3 years later. In 1996, they welcomed a daughter, Logan, who was later diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. Shannon accepted her daughter's diagnosis with love and care, becoming her closest companion. The family was later completed with the arrival of another daughter, Serena. Shannon devoted herself to her children's well-being, education, and spiritual growth. She was also known for her cooking, crafts, and other hobbies within their community. However, she was so focused on being a caring mother and a loving wife that she didn't realize her husband was having an affair at work. When she discovered his affair, she felt deeply betrayed and shocked. This led her to file for divorce in 2000, marking the beginning of a new chapter in her life. She still had feelings for her ex-husband, so she moved to Arizona to start fresh and ease the pain of their separation. There, she attempted to start a new relationship, but it didn't work out because she realized she still loved her ex, Clay. Clay was also reaching out to her and asking her to come back, claiming he had changed. Believing him, she gave him another chance. In 2001, they had a son named Marshall, their fifth child. However, instead of strengthening their relationship, Marshall's birth created new tensions. Even when they formally remarried in 2006, their relationship remained strained. 6 months later, the family moved to Deer Park, Washington. Clay's work kept him away, leaving Shannon to care for the children and manage the household. She kept her family entertained by organizing outings and parties at home. However, the frequent time spent apart put a strain on her marriage, creating doubts and mistrust that eventually led to a permanent separation in 2010. Crossing into her 40s, Shannon started to rebuild her life with the hope of finding love again. She was determined not to give up or make the same mistakes as before. Even when her ex-husband Clay suffered a serious injury, Shannon chose not to go back to him. However, she still provided him with support and help. In February 2011, Clay quit his job and moved to Deer Park to be closer to his children and Shannon. Although he hoped Shannon would take him back, she didn't feel the same way. She had finally found freedom and was enjoying it. After Clay's surgery, Austin and Blake moved in with him, enjoying more independence from their mother. Shannon started a new chapter, finding a part-time job and enrolling in a dental assistant course to support her family since Clay stopped paying child support due to illness. The children stayed with Clay on Wednesdays and every other weekend. By summer's end, Shannon completed her certification and was ready for her next goal. Shannon Starbuck had been seeking a fresh start, creating a dating profile in hopes of meeting someone special and leaving her past heartache behind. She regretted spending her best years with a man who didn't appreciate her and was capable of deceit. Tragically, her dreams were cut short one December morning when she became Shannon of a heinous crime. Her funeral, held on December 10, 2011, was attended by a large number of people, a testament to her bright and sincere personality. She was laid to rest at a cemetery in Orlando. The investigation into her death was swift, thanks to public attention. Detectives focused on her ex-husband Clay, verifying his alibi for December 1st. His fingerprints didn't match those at the crime scene, so they checked his story against databases and examined Shannon's phone, laptop, and diary for other potential suspects. Detectives thoroughly examined Shannon's mobile phone, leading them to add several individuals to the list of suspects. These men had been in contact with her through a dating site, raising suspicions about their potential involvement. One suspect, Tom Walker, had arranged a date with Shannon for December 5th, just hours before her death. Their conversations had been candid, and they had exchanged photos. However, when Tom Walker requested that Shannon take a photo using an adult toy, she declined. Notably, her body was later discovered in the exact pose that Tom Walker had mentioned. Within an hour, detectives located Tom Walker, who was shocked not only by the news of Shannon's death but also by being considered a suspect. He promptly provided an explanation for his activities on the day of her death, which was corroborated by his colleagues and surveillance footage. The next individual on the list was John Wilson, who had scheduled a meeting with Shannon on December 1st. An examination of their correspondence revealed. The investigation revealed that the suitor, whose real name was John Kinlawn, had no intention of a serious relationship with Shannon and had used a fake identity. He was married and worked in a different field than he claimed, which explained his secretive behavior. When questioned, Kinlawn had an alibi for the time of the crime, which was corroborated, and he was released after providing a DNA sample. The investigation was back to square one, But a breakthrough came when detectives examined Shannon's mobile phone. They discovered that a 911 call had been made from the phone on the morning of December 1st, but it had been deleted from the call log. After retrieving the call, they found it contained only the sounds of sobbing and rustling before abruptly ending. Shannon's phone records revealed a failed call and 11 messages sent after her death. GPS data confirmed her phone was at home, where she was killed after dropping her kids at school. The suspect tried to mislead the investigation and was found to be close to the Shannon family, even using a nickname for the youngest son. After uncovering this information, Clay's statements were examined more closely. He had a clear motive for killing his ex-wife, as divorce can be difficult for some partners to accept. Additionally, he had the perfect opportunity, knowing her daily routine. As a result, authorities decided to track the suspect's car route again, this time using footage from street surveillance cameras. This is when the officers' suspicions became clearer. It turned out that Clay's car had not broken down. At the same time, results from another analysis arrived, showing that DNA material collected from Shannon's body matched the suspect's samples exactly. When Shannon returned home, a heated argument broke out, which ultimately led to her death. The unusual position of her body was a deliberate act of vengeance by Clay, who was enraged by her newfound freedom. After the murder, Clay stayed in the house and impersonated Shannon in text messages. It became clear that his intentions to harm her may have been long-standing. A friend's conversation with detectives took on new significance, revealing that Clay and Shannon's relationship was troubled. Shannon had confided in friends that she was tired of Clay's controlling behavior and criticism, and had feared he might harm her if she ever left him. In fact, Shannon had contacted the police multiple times between June and November 2011, reporting that Clay was stalking her and making her feel unsafe in her own home. She had become so fearful that she refused to give anyone a spare key to her house. Ultimately, Shannon secured a restraining order against Clay, limiting their communication to text messages. A thorough examination of her diary revealed that she not only feared her former lover but also believed he was manipulating their children against her. Clay had been spreading vicious rumors and portraying her as promiscuous. As a result, when he was arrested on February 6, 2012, the children refused to believe he was involved. The discovery of a tracking program on Shannon's laptop, a hard drive labeled Shannon's desktop computer, in Clay's house, and printed correspondences did not seem to disturb them. The older children questioned the authenticity of the DNA analysis, thinking the accusations against their father were unbelievable and the case was fabricated. However, law enforcement and other relatives had a different perspective. At the trial, the prosecution presented a substantial amount of physical evidence and testimonies, confidently demonstrating Clay's guilt. In June 2013, justice was served when Clay Starbuck was found guilty of first-degree deprivation of life under aggravating circumstances and disrespect to human remains. He was sentenced to life without parole. His 2015 appeal was denied. He's serving time in Spokane County. Shannon's family grieves her loss, but the children siding with their father hurts more. His obsession led to revenge, leaving the children without a mother or father. The case of Megan Newton. Megan Newton was born in 2001 to Michael and Sarah, and she also has a half-sister named Demi. Megan spends most of her time with her mother, Sarah. The two have a very close bond. They are like best friends, and Megan never hides anything from her mother. Sarah often consults her daughter on various important issues. Mother, she finds that Megan has shown wisdom beyond her years. Sarah describes her daughter as very ambitious, energetic, and easygoing. Megan's friends also describe her as humorous, compassionate, and thoughtful. Megan describes herself as having a heart of gold. Ever since she was a child, she has always been willing to help others. During her elementary school years, Megan became acquainted with a friend who had just moved from China to England. Because her English is limited and she often has difficulty learning and communicating, her teacher decides to assign Megan to help her new friend. Hoping that Megan's compassion and helpful nature will help her adapt quickly. Megan is very helpful and overcomes the language barrier to support her classmate. Megan's kindness and openness continued as she grew older, showing through her passion for sports, especially soccer. She joined the Stoke-on-Trent girls' soccer team and spent her weekends coaching girls under 7. Megan hopes to win a sports scholarship to the United States because she loves soccer and wants to pursue a career in the field. Megan even showed her love for the game by getting a small tattoo of a soccer boot. After completing her studies, Megan began her university journey with the goal of becoming a sports therapist or physiotherapist. This was a milestone as she was the first member of her family to attend a higher education institution. Megan Newton was a talented young student, ready for a bright future. Megan had been living an independent life, confident in her ability to plan and make decisions. She had moved into her own flat in a high-rise building on Fletcher Road. One night, Megan decided to go out with friends to a nightclub in Hanley. They spent the night dancing, drinking, and having fun. Early on Saturday morning, before 3 a.m., Megan took a taxi home with a friend and a young man. The next morning, a neighbor discovered a set of keys near the building with blood stains. These keys were handed to a housing officer, who noticed the blood splatter and decided to check on the occupants of the flat. When they entered the apartment with a neighbor, they witnessed a horrific scene. Megan's body was found on the bed, naked, bloody and lying face down. Megan had been stabbed multiple times with a kitchen knife, which was found near the scene of the murder. Identification documents identified the victim as Megan Newton, helping police identify the innocent young woman who was murdered in her bedroom. When the police arrived at the scene, they quickly informed Megan's family of the painful end. The family went to the morgue to identify their daughter. The police and forensics cordoned off the crime scene and collected vital information at Megan's apartment. The autopsy revealed the horrific extent of the attack she had suffered. Megan had been strangled, rendered unconscious, and then stabbed 9 times in the back, puncturing both lungs. There was also evidence of sexual assault. The fatal weapon, a kitchen knife, was found in Megan's home. The autopsy revealed that it was the stab wounds that led to Megan Newton's death. The bloody knife and apartment key were sent to the lab for forensic analysis, hoping to find the killer's DNA. It is suspected that the killer accidentally dropped the key when leaving Megan's apartment after the crime. Police began gathering information from Megan's acquaintances and relatives. Through this, they determined that Megan spent the evening at a club before calling a taxi home early in the morning. Police have been closely examining surveillance footage from the area near the nightclub and Megan's route home to track her final movements. Police are particularly interested in footage that shows Megan getting into a taxi with a friend and an unidentified young man. Another video from inside Megan's apartment complex showed the same young man as before, this time appearing on the premises. Fortunately, a camera was placed in a common hallway, giving police a clear view of the entrance to Megan's apartment, especially on the night of the crime. The police's goal is to identify the killer by carefully analyzing video footage from that night. At approximately 3:44 a.m., Megan and the young man she had shared a taxi with about an hour earlier entered the lobby of the apartment building. The two headed toward her apartment, with Megan appearing cheerful. When she reached the door, Megan used her key to unlock it and the two entered. The camera captured the moment as Megan unlocked the door. The young man standing behind her looked around the area, even looking into the camera. This behavior led the police to suspect that the young man may have intended to harm Megan. A closer look at video footage from the rest of that night revealed that the young man left the apartment the next morning at approximately 5:54 a.m. He attempted to leave the building but realized he did not have the key to the door. He returned to Megan's apartment, retrieved the key, and left. An outside surveillance camera captured him throwing an object, and a neighbor later discovered the apartment key was stained with blood. The camera also recorded him leaving the scene. He checked his hands and they appeared to be bloody. The police identified this young man as the main suspect. Police investigating the Megan Newton case investigated the surveillance footage and discovered that a man named Joseph Trevor had approached the nightclub, got into the same taxi as Megan, and then went to her apartment. Joseph Trevor is an 18-year-old boy from a family where both parents are police officers. He lives in a neighboring district and is Megan Newton's high school classmate. Joseph has good academic performance and a passion for sports, especially soccer. Joseph even won a sports scholarship to study in the United States and has played professional soccer for Newcastle. Those who know Joseph mostly consider him a kind, easygoing, and sociable person. But few people know that he has another side to his personality, which is erratic and unpredictable. Joseph can switch from being cheerful and engaging to being withdrawn, rude, and abrupt without any apparent reason. However, when the police investigated the Megan Newton case, they began to focus on Joseph's past. About 3 years ago, when Joseph was 15, he was accused by someone else of forcing a girl to have intimate contact, although the attempt was unsuccessful and Joseph was not charged or imprisoned, but many people at school knew about the incident. The police discovered that Joseph had also attended a party with friends the night before. They met at a bar, where Megan was also present. Although they knew each other from school, they only said hello and continued to enjoy their private time. However, Joseph did not stay at the bar for long. Security found him with a package of white powder suspected to be drugs, so they took him outside and called the police. When police arrived at the scene, they arrested Joseph and took him to a nearby police station. The police may have known that Joseph's parents were also police officers, so Joseph was released shortly thereafter. The police confiscated the ketamine and advised Joseph to return home and avoid using illegal drugs. Against the police's advice, Joseph did not return home. He went straight back to the club where Megan was. Joseph was then denied entry to the club. At 2:40 a.m., after Megan left the club, she ran into Joseph in the taxi queue. Joseph told Megan what had happened at the police station. Joseph expressed his concern about being scolded by his parents for drinking too much. And Joseph's parents were police officers, so they might have known about his arrest for illegal drug possession. Joseph felt anxious and did not know what to do next. Megan, out of kindness and willingness to help, lent Joseph her phone to try to contact a friend. However, Joseph could not find a place to stay for the night. When she found Joseph in a drunken and disorderly state, Megan invited Joseph to spend the night on her living room sofa. Megan and her friend took Joseph by taxi. On the way, Joseph texted his father, saying he had spent the night at a friend's house. When they arrived at the Fletcher Road apartment building, the taxi dropped Megan's friend off first. The taxi then took Megan and Joseph to the apartment building. The cameras captured them entering the building. Some time later, Joseph came out and threw the keys in the yard. Police believe that, during this time, Joseph brutally attacked Megan, leading to her tragic death. Joseph could not contest the charges because the evidence was clear. Joseph went to a bridge in Stoke-on-Trent and climbed onto the railing, sitting looking down at the pavement. It appeared that Joseph was about to jump to escape the consequences of his actions. However, Joseph had a history of depression and attempted suicide. Joseph had been found on this bridge before, when a passerby alerted the police. Joseph was taken to hospital for a psychological evaluation and was later determined to be safe to leave. He returned home under the supervision of his father. Joseph returned home and told his mother the whole truth. Joseph felt he could no longer keep the secret and realized the serious consequences of his actions. Joseph's mother immediately contacted the police to relay his confession. At that time, the police identified Joseph as the prime suspect through surveillance camera footage. They were on their way to arrest Joseph. When brought to the police station for questioning, Joseph admitted to having been to Megan's house that evening. However, he did not provide details about the attack. Joseph's account was consistent with the surveillance camera footage, which showed him entering her apartment. Joseph said that Megan voluntarily gave him the sofa. After the intercourse, Joseph suffered amnesia and had no recollection of subsequent events. Joseph maintained that the relationship between him and her was consensual and not assaultive. However, the police did not believe Joseph's story. They suspected that Joseph had deliberately erased important memories and that he was fully aware of his actions. The police believed that Joseph was fully conscious throughout. Joseph changed his story repeatedly. First, Joseph took partial responsibility for Megan's death. Then, Joseph admitted to killing Megan, but maintained that their sexual relationship was consensual. Joseph maintained this story until his trial on February 17, 2020. However, during the trial, Joseph unexpectedly pleaded guilty to all charges. Joseph was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after serving a minimum of 21 years. During the trial, Joseph turned to Megan's mother, Sarah, and said sorry. This confession, by this point, no longer made sense, and it made her extremely angry. Apologies cannot fix the past or ease the pain Megan's family has endured while awaiting trial. Megan's best friend, Ricardo Eccles, shared that they had planned to go shopping in Manchester the day after Megan's death. Ricardo was devastated when he heard the news of Megan's sudden passing. The news shocked Ricardo. However, in memory of Megan, Ricardo started a fundraising campaign to help cover the funeral costs for Megan's family. Ricardo successfully raised some money, which was then given to Megan's mother. Megan has always been there for those in need, and now it's time for them to show their gratitude. Megan's family and loved ones need emotional support and help during this difficult time. Megan was a fan of Stoke City Football Club. During a match, the players and fans observed a minute's silence in her memory. The case of Anna Repkina. Anna Alexieva Repkina, a charming and outgoing woman from Chelyabinsk, Russia, hailed from a good family. With a strong work ethic, passion for travel, rock music, and cats, she owned several. Anna was a vibrant individual. She loved capturing life's precious moments through photography and valued romantic relationships deeply. Her ultimate goal was to find true love, settle down, have children, and build a happy family. Anna's remarkable sense of humor made her a delight to be around, something her friends and acquaintances often highlighted. However, her life took a dramatic turn in 2016, when a high school sweetheart of 7 years ended their relationship, leaving her devastated. Despite this heartbreak, Anna refused to give up on her dreams. She took the initiative to try online dating, determined to find her ideal partner. On a Russian dating site, she came across a promising match who seemed to possess all the qualities she was looking for. Anna met a charming young man named William Hargrove, a 26-year-old from Oregon who worked as a bouncer and mechanic. What drew her to him was his fascination with Russian culture, but more importantly, his adoration for her. William consistently showed kindness to Anna, often complimenting her and making an effort to be present for her whenever she needed him, despite the physical distance between them. Those who knew him described William as a charismatic and passionate person with a great sense of humor, who inspired those around him to chase their dreams. As they developed their online relationship over several months, their bond grew stronger. They seemed perfectly suited for each other, sharing similar tastes in music and a love for live performances, as well as a similar sense of humor. Friends who knew them noted that Anna and William complemented each other beautifully. William's caring nature was evident in his thoughtful gestures, such as sending Anna flowers despite being separated by oceans. Anna and William's online chemistry was undeniable, but they wanted to confirm their connection in person. So in December 2016, they decided to take their relationship to the next level. Anna booked a flight to Oregon to spend the Christmas holidays with William. However, she initially made a mistake and booked a ticket to Portland, Maine, instead of Portland, Oregon. Before realizing the error, she had already flown to Maine, but she was determined to make it work. After fixing her flight issues, Anna finally arrived in Oregon. William picked her up from the airport, and they spent the next 10 days together. He took her on sightseeing trips, and they enjoyed activities like visiting the seaside, playing in the snow, and cuddling by the fire. William also introduced her to his friends, and they celebrated New Year's Eve together, sharing a romantic kiss at midnight. It was the perfect Christmas experience for Anna. After a whirlwind 10-day visit, William popped the question to Anna using his grandmother's emerald ring, and she happily accepted. However, what Anna didn't know was that William was leading a double life. During their time together, he had also been secretly seeing his 33-year-old landlady, Michelle Chavez, behind her back. William rented a room in Michelle's house, and it seemed he also held a special place in her heart. Michelle was married with 2 children, but this didn't deter her romantic involvement with William. Their affair had been ongoing for over a year when Anna, William's girlfriend, visited Michelle's home. Unbeknownst to Anna, she was meeting her rival, as Michelle was her boyfriend's landlady. Michelle showed understanding when William brought Anna to her home, perhaps thinking William would never leave her or believing Anna was insignificant, much like her own husband. Whatever the reason, Michelle didn't expose their secret. It wasn't until Michelle discovered the engagement ring that her husband's stance on the situation became clear to everyone involved. Meanwhile, Anna returned to Russia, unaware of the drama she had left behind. After posting a photo of her engagement ring on Facebook, the social media algorithm brought the post to Michelle's attention. Michelle's anger wasn't solely due to William's engagement to another woman. Michelle planned to leave her husband to be with William and, as a symbol of her commitment, took off her wedding ring and gave it to him. However, she soon discovered that the ring was identical to the engagement ring William had given to Anna. It turned out that William had given Anna Michelle's own wedding ring, which had been recycled. Michelle confronted William about this, and he tried to calm her down, insisting that Anna meant nothing to him and promising to break off their engagement on March 1st, 2017. Meanwhile, Anna had packed her bags, including her wedding dress, and had quit her job, ready to start a new life with William in another part of the world. Michelle was unhappy about this development. Anna's mother, Yelena, also had reservations about her daughter's hasty decision. She was unsure about William, whom Anna barely knew, and thought she was rushing into things. Anna, however, was convinced that she was in love and saw no reason to wait. Yelena finally released Michelle from her grasp. Michelle, realizing Anna's visit was not a social call, grew angry. She demanded that William find another place to live, refusing to let the engaged couple stay under her roof. William complied, renting an apartment for himself and Anna. However, he continued to secretly see Michelle, sneaking out to visit her and reassuring her of his commitment to her, downplaying Anna's importance. Michelle became increasingly worried about William's growing relationship with Anna, so she took action. She contacted Anna on Facebook, revealing everything about her and William's ongoing affair. Anna reported the conversation to William, but he dismissed it as Michelle's jealousy. Anna believed him, and the couple decided to ignore Michelle's warnings and focus on their future together. They set a wedding date for March 23rd and planned a beachside ceremony. Anna wore the wedding dress she had brought from Russia, and they headed to the beach. However, the officiant failed to show up. After waiting for what felt like an eternity, they returned home. They planned to try to get married again in April. On that same day, surveillance footage captured the couple buying food at a McDonald's drive-thru. Anna sat in the passenger seat, still wearing her wedding dress. William had told her that the officiant was sick, but that was a lie. Despite claiming he didn't love Anna, William had kept her convinced that he wasn't invested in their relationship. However, Michelle had grown tired of William's manipulation. On April 15th, Michelle gave William an ultimatum: choose between her and Anna. Michelle made it clear that if Anna wasn't gone by April 20th, she would take drastic action, build a snowman, a sinister phrase meaning to kill someone, and hide their body in a snowy area where it would never be found. After issuing her threat, Michelle lost contact with William and assumed he had chosen Anna over her. She left him voicemails to express her feelings. On Sunday, April 16th, William phoned Michelle to share the news that he was single again, having just ended his tumultuous relationship with Anna, who was now headed back to Russia. Coincidentally, William had hit a deer with his car and was waiting at the Ailey tile store for repairs. He asked Michelle to meet him there. As it was Easter Sunday, Michelle was attending a family gathering, but she excused herself to join William. When she arrived, they reconnected by having an intimate moment in William's car, reaffirming their strong connection. On April 17th, Anna's body was discovered in the forest. Initially, investigators didn't know her identity, as there was no identification found with her body, and she had only been in the state for about a month. The crime scene lacked a murder weapon, but was littered with trash. However, amidst the debris, a clear plastic bag caught their attention. Inside, they found a KFC receipt, an empty Pepsi cup, and a KFC chicken paper bag. The KFC receipt turned out to be the crucial clue in solving the case. It contained a date, time, and debit card number, which led investigators to Kevin Thomas. When questioned, Kevin revealed that he was best friends with William and had been getting to know Anna. He also shared a tradition with William, where they would eat lunch at KFC every Friday. The receipt, it turned out, was from a purchase made about a week before Kevin's questioning. The investigation into Anna's death led to the discovery of William's deceitful behavior. In his interview, Kevin revealed that William had borrowed his shotgun, claiming he wanted to go to the woods to clear his head. However, William never returned the weapon. The police began to suspect William and Michelle after hearing Kevin's statement. Following Anna's death, William's behavior became increasingly unusual and suspicious. He withdrew money from Anna's bank account to pay off his debts, and was caught on camera buying cigars and Star Wars Legos at various stores. William also confided in Kevin that he was spending money recklessly to cope with his emotions. Furthermore, he began researching time travel and even reached out to strangers on WhatsApp, offering to exchange his soul for the opportunity to go back in time. William wanted to travel back in time to April 16th to prevent a situation caused by his best friend's mistake. However, on that day, William was seen crying in a store employee's arms, claiming his girlfriend had just broken up with him. He had moved back in with Michelle, but was picked up by the police and questioned. The police asked William about his whereabouts on April 16th, and he said he was on a drive with Michelle. When asked about Anna, he denied having a romantic relationship with her, saying they had only gone on 2 dates, and he had ended things. According to William, their last interaction was in mid-March, when Anna, mistakenly, posted their engagement on Facebook, causing trouble with Michelle. When questioned about the trash found near his late fiancée, or the woman he dated, William admitted to littering, but claimed it was just KFC trash and a can from the general store, not related to Anna's death. About 40 miles separated the Alp General Store from the logging road. However, the investigators did not believe William's alibi. Lieutenant Chris Duffett, one of the investigators, quickly increased the pressure by revealing that William's trash had been discovered near a murder victim at a different location. Initially, William reacted with surprise and heartbreak, feigning disbelief that he was being questioned about a murder. 2 days after Anna Rapina's body was found, her fiancé William Hargrove was arrested for her murder on April 19th. During the investigation, Michelle was also questioned about her whereabouts on April 16th, the day Anna was killed. At first, Michelle stuck to a rehearsed alibi, claiming she and William had spent the day together, with William picking her up from her mother's house and going on a drive. However, Michelle later changed her story, admitting she had lied initially. She then claimed that she and William had planned to meet up, but he never called or showed up. When the police revealed that William was in custody for murder, Michelle's response was surprisingly calm, saying only, "Okay." The investigator pressed Michelle on her lack of emotion, which eventually broke down, and she tearfully attributed her initial calm to being in shock. William Hargrove was indicted on charges of murder, identity theft, and 2 counts of theft in June 2018. His trial began in October 2019, with the prosecution seeking the maximum penalties for each charge, while the defense argued for a more lenient sentence. William's defenders claimed he was innocent and that Melissa, the spurned lover, was the true culprit. However, the prosecution presented a strong case against William, backed by evidence and motive. The evidence showed that William was torn between 2 lovers, with Anna pressuring him to make a choice. There were records of William and Anna driving together in an Alon car. On the day of Anna's murder, William's cell phone was tracked to the logging road at 4:30 p.m. The shotgun used to kill Anna was found in William's car, with his fingerprints being the only ones on the weapon. Despite denying any involvement in Anna's death, William was caught using her money to go shopping and pay off his car insurance. He was even filmed withdrawing cash from an ATM using her card. The prosecution argued that William had driven Anna to the forest, gotten her out of the car, and then executed her with his shotgun. The prosecution claimed that William was faced with a choice between Anna and Michelle, leading to his actions. In contrast, the defense argued that their client was innocent. According to the prosecution, the evidence pointed to Melissa as the perpetrator. A threat from Melissa to build a snowman with Anna, her cell phone found near the logging road, and Anna's cell phone discovered in Melissa's house suggested that Melissa had planned the crime. Melissa, who was not charged with any crimes, testified as a witness for the prosecution. She revealed that she worked as a late-night cab driver and was married to an Oregon State University instructor, but their marriage was loveless and open. She met William at a bar where he worked and, with her husband's permission, began a romantic relationship with him. As they grew closer, William rented a room in her house. When Anna entered the picture, Melissa was not threatened, having a similar open relationship with William. Melissa explained that by her second visit, she couldn't tolerate the situation anymore, especially when she saw her own wedding ring on Anna's finger. Although she had given William an ultimatum, she had no role in William's actions that hurt Anna. Melissa clarified that she never intended for Anna to get hurt or killed. She denied the defense's allegations, stating that the threat about building a snowman was just a joke, a light-hearted family comment, even if it was a bit extreme. She acknowledged that her cell phone was found in the forest, but William was the one who drove her there. She didn't know why or what he planned. Furthermore, William had given her Anna's cell phone the day before he was questioned. As his partner, she naturally held onto it for him. Melissa's testimony lasted 14 hours, and she was not the only one. Around 70 other people testified, including Anna's mother, William's best friend and roommate, some of Melissa's family members, and others. Throughout the case, Melissa faced intense scrutiny, particularly in her hometown in Oregon, where she was criticized and ostracized by the locals. Michelle had reached a low point and attempted suicide, but fortunately, it was unsuccessful. The prosecutor praised Michelle's efforts to take responsibility, calling her actions tough and super tough. After a month of court appearances, the judge asked the jury to deliver their verdict. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours and returned with a decision. Despite the defense's efforts, they couldn't find Michelle guilty of Anna's death. There was no physical evidence linking Michelle to the crime scene or the weapon used. In fact, she had a solid alibi. She was celebrating Easter at her mother's house, and multiple witnesses could vouch for her presence. On the other hand, William maintained his not guilty plea, but the overwhelming evidence against him led to his conviction on all charges. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole in 25 years. Anna's attorney announced plans to appeal the verdict. Notably, the jurors developed a strong connection with each other during the trial. After the trial, they visited the logging trail, where Anna's life was tragically cut short, to pay their respects to her memory. Anna will be remembered as a courageous young woman who left her home in Russia to build a new life in the United States. Anna was a loving person who openly shared her love with others. She was cherished by many during her lifetime, and her memory will continue to be loved and honored. The prosecutor, Amy Matsko, stated, "The case of Wang Nan. Wang Nan was born in 1987 in Guangzhou, China, a major city and former capital. She came from a relatively affluent family, and her parents provided her with the best possible education, fostering her talents and potential. Wang Nan excelled academically, particularly in the sciences. After completing her secondary education, she enrolled in a prestigious university, studying business and finance fundamentals while mastering multiple foreign languages. Upon graduation, she landed a job at a large travel agency, where she established herself as a valuable, responsible, and highly motivated employee. Her career progressed rapidly, and she was soon assigned to Thailand to lead and develop a new branch. Wang Nan was a high-achieving manager at a travel agency, but she left to pursue her own business venture. She opened a Chinese restaurant in Bangkok, which quickly grew into a popular chain under her leadership. As a successful entrepreneur, Wang effectively managed and expanded her business. However, her professional success came at the cost of her personal life. Her last romantic relationship was during her university days, and once she started working, she had no time for dating due to her demanding schedule. Wang, nearing her 30th birthday, wasn't worried about her solitary life, consumed by her business. To improve her Thai skills, she enrolled in courses at a training center. There, she met Yu, who caught her attention by staring before approaching her in Thai. They briefly conversed, and Yu asked why she was studying Thai. Wang replied it was essential for her business growth. Yu proposed that they exchange business cards so they could arrange to meet again. As a courtesy, Wang gave him her card, and he gave her his in return. According to his card, Yu was involved in the export-import trade in Bangkok, but this information didn't make a significant impression on Wang, who simply put the card in her purse and forgot about it. In contrast, Yu seemed truly interested and followed up by calling Wang the very next day. However, she was too preoccupied with work at that time and politely turned down his invitation to meet for coffee. A few days later, the situation recurred. Wang declined another date, citing her busy schedule and preparations for a business conference where she aimed to expand her professional network. However, Yu appeared at the event, bearing a lavish bouquet of flowers. He waited for Wang to become available, then approached her and asked her out again. Wang was won over by Yu's persistence, as no one had ever pursued her so fervently. She agreed to dinner, marking the beginning of an unexpected romance. Yu fell deeply in love with Wang, showering her with attention, surprises, and gifts. He sent flowers and sweet notes every morning and called her twice a day. Wang's feelings were mixed, irritated by his intensity but flattered by his efforts. She found herself in a romantic relationship again, swept up by his wooing. Wang Nan was thrilled to discover that Yu shared her passions and hobbies. To win her heart, You made an effort to learn how to cook her favorite meals and surprised her with tickets to thrilling events. Not only was you charming, but he was also very supportive, always willing to lend a hand whenever Wang Nan needed it, whether at work or at home. Wang Nan felt like she was on cloud nine, but one thing bothered her. After just a few months of dating, you was already talking about getting married and even suggesting names for their future kids. Wang Man was taken aback by Yu's eagerness, but he justified it by pointing out that they were both in their 30s and it was time to start a family. Wang Man was unsure how to respond, feeling uncertain about Yu's suitability as a life partner. After a heart-to-heart conversation, where Wang Nan expressed her doubts, Yu vowed to prove his love. That night, he sent her a heartfelt letter, reaffirming his commitment to being a devoted husband and father. In the morning, Wang found Yu waiting on her doorstep with a bouquet of flowers. He proclaimed his serious intentions and readiness to marry her immediately. Wang Man joked that the courthouse wouldn't be open for another hour and a half. However, Yu suggested going there right away, and if it was open, they would register their marriage on the spot. Wang agreed, confident that the courthouse would be closed. But to her surprise, they found it open, and the officer was already at his desk, ready to register their marriage registration. It was revealed that Yu had made prior arrangements, requesting a special exception to formalize their marriage early in the morning. The wedding was unusual, with no guests, rings, wedding dress, or photos. Wang couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't real, especially since she hadn't introduced Yu to her mother, with whom she was very close. Before she knew it, she was holding a marriage certificate. Wang and Yu had a troubled family life. Wang regretted her marriage almost immediately after it was registered. Initially, she had hoped that Yu would be a good husband and a reliable partner. However, her hopes were soon dashed as Yu revealed his true nature. He spent most of his time at home playing video games, using his wife's money, and contributing nothing to the household income. When Wang asked him why he didn't work, Yu claimed that his business was experiencing a seasonal downturn and that he could take a break. However, this downturn had been ongoing for an extended period, prompting Wang to investigate her husband's business. She discovered that his supposed export-import business was merely a facade, existing only on paper and business cards. At that moment, Wang realized the gravity of her mistake in not creating a prenuptial agreement. This meant her husband, Yu, had the freedom to spend her earnings as he pleased and could claim her property in the event of a divorce. They had a heart-to-heart conversation, during which Yu broke down in tears, promising to turn his life around and find employment. However, it soon became apparent that he had no intention of looking for a job and was content to rely on his wife's financial support. Yu, a grown man, regularly behaved immaturely, devoting most of his time to playing computer games. On the rare occasions when he helped with household chores or assisted his wife at their restaurant, he would request money from her for personal expenses. Wang eventually reached her limit and informed Yu she wouldn't give him any more money until he secured employment. The next day, following this conversation, Yu vanished, taking their marriage certificate and Wang's identity card with him. It wasn't until the evening, when Wang received a call from her accountant inquiring about a large sum of money transferred from her account, that she realized the item were missing. She was shocked, as she hadn't authorized any transfers, but she immediately suspected Yu. The transferred amount exceeded $500,000, which Yu had moved into his personal account by providing the bank with their marriage certificate, Wang's documents, and a claim that the money was jointly managed. Wang immediately reported the theft to the police, and her husband, Yu, was tracked down a few hours later when he tried to withdraw some of the stolen funds. Yu broke down in tears and begged for his wife's forgiveness, revealing that he had accumulated a large debt due to his gambling addiction and was being threatened. It was also revealed that Yu had a previous run-in with the law, having served an 8-year prison sentence for robbery in China. Wang was both shocked and ashamed, realizing she was not as familiar with her husband as she had thought. Despite this, she viewed gambling as an illness and felt driven to support her husband in overcoming his addiction and resuming a normal life. Wang not only agreed to pay off half of Yu's debt, but also offered him a job as a manager at one of her restaurants. Initially, Yu seemed grateful and took his new role seriously, even devising a successful strategy for the restaurant's development. However, his enthusiasm was short-lived, and he soon began spending more time playing computer games and engaging in other leisure activities. During that time, Wang found out she was pregnant and told her husband, Yu. However, he reacted strangely and aggressively, saying he wasn't ready for a child and wanted her to have an abortion. Wang refused, and Yu threatened to divorce her and divide their property through the court. He didn't speak to her for several days, but then apologized and changed his behavior. Yu explained that he had said hurtful things in the heat of the moment, but was actually happy about the pregnancy. He started showing care and helping out around the house again. 2 months later, Wang was happy because her marriage had improved, and Yu was being attentive and responsible. He was preparing their home for the arrival of the baby and doing his job as a manager. One day, Yu suggested getting life and health insurance for Wang because of her pregnancy, to protect her and the baby in case of unexpected events. Wang agreed and wondered why she hadn't thought of it earlier. They got the insurance the next day, and a couple of weeks later, Yu suggested taking a vacation to relax and unwind. Wang was initially hesitant about taking a trip, but her husband persuaded her by pointing out that they had never had a honeymoon and would soon be too busy with their baby to travel. He also emphasized that they needed a break to clear their minds after a tough period. Eventually, Wang agreed to the trip. Her husband took charge of planning the trip, choosing the destination, booking the hotel, and organizing activities to ensure a balance of excitement, education, and relaxation, given Wang's pregnancy. Wang was happy to let him handle everything and was pleased to see how enthusiastic he was about their vacation. On June 7th, they arrived at the park and spent the day exploring, taking in the beautiful views and sights. As it was a summer Friday evening, the park was crowded with visitors. As the evening wore on, Wang noticed that her husband was becoming increasingly agitated and nervous. When she asked if everything was okay, he replied that the large crowds of tourists were ruining their chances of a peaceful and private sunset viewing. Wang Nan eventually agreed that it would be romantic to watch the sunset, as the park would become less crowded as the sun dipped below the horizon. Yu climbed over the fence of the observation deck and called out to his wife, telling her about the breathtaking view. However, Wang refused to join him, citing the darkness and potential danger. Yu became angry but returned to her after a few minutes. He suggested that they should come back to the park to watch the sunrise instead. Since they returned to their hotel well past midnight, they decided to sleep in on Saturday and head back to the reserve early on Sunday morning. On Sunday, June 9th, a couple, Yu and Wang, visited the national park to watch the sunrise. They woke up at 3 a.m. and arrived at the park while it was still dark, finding the area mostly deserted. From an observation deck, they admired the dawn. Afterwards, Yu went down to a cliff and encouraged Wang to join him to see the rock paintings. Wang was hesitant, but Yu assured her it was safe and promised to help her down and then climb back up. She trusted him and cautiously approached the cliff. The view was breathtaking. Yu hugged Wang and asked if she had any regrets in life. She replied confidently that she didn't. Yu then ran his hand through her hair, kissed her cheek, and leaned in to whisper, "Die." He loosened his grip and pushed Wang down the cliff. He checked to ensure no one was watching, looked down but couldn't see where she had fallen. There was only silence, indicating no one had seen or heard anything. Yu walked calmly towards the park exit, intending to report the incident only after Wang was surely dead. However, a few hikers who had wandered off the trail spotted Wang's body on the rocks and quickly called for rescue. As you left the reserve, several emergency vehicles with flashing lights and sirens sped past him. Realizing what was happening, he returned to the scene where his wife had fallen. Upon his return, you put on a dramatic display of grief, crying and screaming for help. Convinced that Wang was already dead, he thought no one would uncover the truth. But, as it turned out, Wang's fall was cushioned by tree branches, bushes, and rocks, which slowed her descent and saved her life, as well as the life of her unborn child. Though she suffered serious injuries, Wang suddenly opened her eyes and attempted to speak. Her husband's initial horror was evident to everyone present, but he quickly regained composure, leaned in close to Wang, and whispered in Chinese that she should remain silent if she wanted to live. Wang suffered severe injuries, including head trauma, multiple fractures, internal organ damage, and significant blood loss. Her spine was also badly damaged, leading doctors to worry that she might never walk again. She spent several days in a coma, during which her husband, Yu, stayed by her side. However, whenever he was alone with her, he thought about how to end her life without arousing suspicion. When Wang regained consciousness, Yu was extremely nervous, fearing she would reveal the truth to the police. He refused to leave her alone, even for a moment. Whenever he had the opportunity, he threatened her, claiming he had nothing to lose. Initially, Wang corroborated Yu's account, attributing her fall to dizziness. However, when Yu briefly left her side, Wang asked a nurse to call the police and prevent Yu from re-entering the room. It was then that she revealed the shocking truth, alleging that her husband had attempted to kill her. Yu burst into the room, claiming his wife was insane due to a head injury and that he would never hurt her or the baby. However, his words lacked conviction, and he was taken into custody at the hospital that same day. He faced multiple charges, including attempted murder and intimidation, for trying to silence his wife. Initially, Wang had hoped to save her pregnancy, as the baby had survived the fall. However, the doctors advised an abortion due to the strong painkillers, multiple surgeries under general anesthesia, and the need for antibiotics. They prioritized Wang's life, as the fetus would likely not survive the effects of the medication. This news was devastating for Wang, but she followed the doctor's advice. Yu consistently denied his guilt and maintained that the event was an accident. In prison, he remained calm and hired skilled lawyers, confident that he could avoid or minimize punishment. Investigators and the prosecutor were convinced that he committed the crime out of self-interest, seeking a substantial insurance payout and his wife's significant fortune of nearly $2.5 million. However, during one interrogation, Yu stunned everyone by revealing another motive for his heinous act. He harbored resentment towards his wife, Wang, for agreeing to only pay off half of his debt, which he accumulated due to his gambling addiction. Yu believed that if his wife truly loved him, she would have covered all of his debts, given her financial means. He concluded that Wang did not love him and felt justified in punishing her. In March 2021, Yu was convicted and received a life sentence. However, Song and his lawyers submitted multiple appeals. 6 months later, the Thai court reduced the sentence to 33 years in prison, showing unusual leniency. Wang and her loved ones were shocked, arguing that such a light sentence would set a bad precedent and potentially encourage others to commit similar horrific crimes. In Yu's case, his relatives claimed that he was a wealthy businessman and that Wang married him for selfish reasons. However, this claim cannot be proven as Yu has nothing but huge debts. As for Wang, despite the doctor's predictions, she was able to recover after undergoing a series of complicated surgeries and a long rehabilitation process. She learned to walk again and spent most of her earnings on her recovery. In 2023, Wang returned to work and was able to revive her once successful business. She also founded an organization dedicated to helping women who are victims of domestic violence and runs her own blog, where she shares her experiences and warns women against making the same mistakes she did. The case of Lisa Holm. Lisa Holm was born on February 7, 1998, in the small Swedish town of Hu, where she grew up in a peaceful environment with her parents and older sister. Lisa was a kind, positive, and determined individual with a strong personality. She had already made up her mind to study architecture in Australia before completing her education. Lisa's love for travel was sparked by numerous trips with her parents to various countries, which also instilled in her a sense of independence from her teenage years. To earn her own money, she took on part-time jobs. In the summer of 2015, at the age of 17, Lisa landed her first job at a cafe located about 40 minutes from her home. Initially, her parents drove her to work, but soon her father gifted her a scooter. The scooter was a welcome gift, allowing her to commute to work independently. However, for the first few weeks, her father accompanied to ensure her safety, as she had limited experience driving on the roads. Lisa only works on weekends and her father always takes her to and from the cafe home. However, on June 7th, her father decided to let her drive herself. On that particular day, her parents visited her at work during lunch, when the cafe was very busy. They had a quick snack together before returning home. Later that day, at 6:23, Lisa sent her father a text saying she was leaving work. 3 minutes later, he received a call from her, but there was no answer when he picked up. He heard a soft voice over the phone, and the sound of a car door closing, leading him to believe that Lisa had accidentally dialed his number while talking to a coworker. Despite calling out her name several times, he got no response and eventually ended the call, expecting her to arrive home soon. However, as the minutes ticked by, Lisa failed to show up, causing her parents to grow increasingly worried. It was her first time driving the scooter alone, and her father was deeply concerned for her safety. He attempted to call her multiple times, but her phone was turned off. After a few more minutes of waiting, Lisa's father decided to drive along the route she would have taken, hoping to meet her along the way. He drove slowly, scanning the road for any sign of her, fearing she might have been in an accident. Despite his efforts, there was no sign of Lisa. The man arrived at the cafe where his daughter Lisa worked, but she wasn't there. However, her scooter was parked outside, which initially calmed his nerves. But upon closer inspection, he noticed her scooter keys were still in the ignition and her helmet was hanging from the handle. This discovery raised his concerns, as Lisa would never leave her scooter unattended. Around the same time, Lisa's mother contacted the cafe owner, hoping to get some information about her daughter's whereabouts. The cafe owner claimed to be unaware of Lisa's location and explained that she had spoken to her employees earlier, who said they were closing the cafe. The cafe owner then drove to the cafe and met up with Lisa's father. Together, they began searching the cafe and its surroundings. The cafe owner also enlisted the help of 4 friends who lived nearby. As the search continued, Lisa's mother and older sister checked the bus schedule, thinking it was possible that Lisa might have taken the bus instead of her scooter. They drove to the bus stop in their town, but unfortunately, Lisa was not on the bus. Despite their efforts, Lisa's family was still unable to find her, and their concerns continued to grow. Lisa's relatives quickly contacted the police after realizing she was missing. It was nearly 1 p.m. Police quickly conducted an extensive search. A crucial discovery was Lisa's scooter, which was left in the parking lot with the keys still in it, leading the police to suspect she might have been abducted. Abductions are extremely rare in Sweden, particularly in Lisa's rural hometown, so the police responded swiftly by deploying multiple search teams with dogs and having officers canvass every nearby house. As news of Lisa's disappearance spread, her classmates and friends took to social media to raise awareness and potentially gather witness accounts. Despite the overnight search, no progress was made. On Monday morning, the police publicly announced Lisa's disappearance and urged anyone with information to come forward. Around the same time, a man working at a barn across from the cafe found a motorcycle glove on the floor and reported it to the police. Detectives re-examined a barn previously inspected on the evening of Lisa's disappearance and discovered a glove. They presented the glove to Lisa's parents, who identified it as their daughter's, providing further evidence for the abduction theory. Police have stepped up the search by sending additional personnel and equipment to assist. By then, Lisa's disappearance had made national headlines, drawing hundreds of volunteers to the search. On Tuesday, the police received multiple leads. A group of volunteers searched a dirt road near the cafe, finding a phone case, receipt, ticket, and broken smartphone screen. After discovering these items, investigators confirmed that they all belonged to Lisa, so they concentrated the search in that area. Further investigation yielded additional parts of the broken smartphone, Lisa's ID, and more receipts. These items were all scattered along the same dirt road, increasing the police's certainty that Lisa was indeed a victim of abduction. The search for Lisa quickly gained a large amount of attention and support, with the number of people involved growing significantly each day. This case became the main news story in Sweden. Hundreds of volunteers from across the country flocked to participate in the search. A group of local volunteers specializing in finding missing people also participated in the search for Lisa. This made Lisa's search operation the largest in Sweden's modern history, with over 1,000 people involved. The police received numerous calls with potential leads. A woman reported a suspicious incident while she was jogging the day before Lisa went missing. A man standing next to his car stopped her on the road and asked for directions to an unfamiliar city in English. When she tried to help him using Google Maps, the man asked her to get into his car to show the route on his navigator. The woman found this request suspicious and refused, continuing her jog instead. The woman shared a crucial detail with the police. She believed she had seen the man before, among the workers repairing a barn across the road from the cafe where Lisa was last seen. On the day Lisa went missing, her co-workers noticed something unusual. A witness saw two men standing across the road from the cafe, stared at the shop. Although the witness didn't think much of it at the time, but she shared this detail with the police after Lisa's disappearance. The following morning, Lisa's father and some friends searched the dirt road where her belongings were found. As they went further, they found Lisa's driver's license and house keys. It seemed that Lisa's abductor was throwing her belongings out of a vehicle. Despite all efforts, police and volunteers found no other clues in the area. That evening, a friend of Lisa's father was driving home from the search when he noticed that the police tape had been removed from the barn where Lisa's glove was found. He decided to re-examine the barn for clues. The friend retrieved a flashlight from his car as it was getting dark and searched the barn for several minutes. He soon spotted something shiny on the floor, which turned out to be a woman's earring, along with an identical earring nearby. The man reported his discovery to the police, who then showed the earrings to Lisa's parents. After confirming that the earrings belonged to their daughter, the police conducted a more thorough search of the storehouse. Initially, the detective explained that the primary focus on the first day of the search was finding Lisa herself. As a result, the barn was not thoroughly inspected, and small items like earrings may have been overlooked. This time, however, numerous forensic experts and search dogs were brought in to aid in the investigation. During the more extensive search, the police found a piece of evidence behind one of the walls that initially seemed unrelated to the case: human feces. Forensic experts, however, proposed an intriguing theory. According to them, in the aftermath of committing severe crimes, the perpetrator's body often releases a significant amount of adrenaline, sometimes leading to a sudden and uncontrollable urge to defecate. It's not uncommon for perpetrators to lose control of their bodily functions due to adrenaline during a crime. Given that Lisa's glove and earrings were discovered in the storehouse, investigators suspected that if she was abducted, the perpetrator might have taken her to the storehouse. They considered the possibility that the perpetrator, under the influence of adrenaline, might have relieved themselves and left behind feces. These feces were subsequently sent for DNA analysis. On Friday, the search area was expanded, and volunteers searched a farm approximately 2 miles from the cafe. The farm consisted of several large buildings with many employees, and the search team decided to inspect each one. Shortly after their arrival, 2 men appeared, communicating only in English as they didn't speak Swedish. One of them claimed that the police had already searched the farm, but the search team leader was skeptical. He believed he would have been informed if the police had indeed visited the farm, so he decided to proceed with the search. The 2 men observed the volunteers for a while before leaving. About an hour later, the search team discovered a pile of branches behind the cowshed. Upon closer inspection, they found a motorcycle helmet, jacket, and headphones hidden underneath. The police swiftly arrived at the scene and confirmed that the items found were indeed Lisa's. To gather more evidence, forensic experts were dispatched to the farm for a thorough investigation. Detectives also investigated the story about 2 suspicious men who attempted to deter volunteers from searching the farm. During their inquiry, the police revisited a report from a woman who encountered an English-speaking man while jogging. The police had a potential suspect in mind. In the early stages of the search, they had visited nearby houses, includes a house where 2 Lithuanian brothers live with their wives. What caught the police's attention was that these 3 individuals did not speak Swedish and communicated in English, making them the only people in the area who did not speak the local language. Additionally, the police had other indirect reasons to suspect them. The brothers worked at a barn near the cafe and the farm where Lisa's helmet was found, indicating they were familiar with these locations. Furthermore, the dirt road where Lisa's belongings were discovered led directly to their house. The police decided to question the 3 individuals since they were the prime suspects. Meanwhile, forensic experts and volunteers arrived at the farm to continue their inspection. Their attention was drawn to an old, neglected trailer surrounded by tall grass, which seemed abandoned for years. However, the flattened grass near the door suggested recent activity. Trapped grass under the door also indicated it had been opened recently. Upon opening the door, the forensic experts were met with a strong smell of decay. Inside, they found a changing room with multiple clothing lockers. All are locked except one. This led them to suspect that Lisa's body might be inside one of the locked lockers. However, they eventually found Lisa's body in an unlocked closet, hidden behind a pile of old clothes and rags. Despite the small space, the perpetrator managed to fit Lisa inside. A rope was around her neck, and her head was covered with a large amount of tape. Her pants were pulled down, and her shirt was pulled up. Medical experts concluded that Lisa's cause of death was strangulation, with no evidence of sexual assault. Her clothing was sent to the lab for further examination. As news of her body's discovery spread rapidly across the country, the case had already been making headlines in Sweden. The brutality of Lisa's murder shocked the entire nation, as such crimes were extremely rare in Sweden. A strange and disturbing discovery was made on YouTube the same day her body was discovered. A video titled 13, featuring a countdown timer, had been posted 13 days before the murder. What makes this video scarier is that it was uploaded to a channel called Lisa Home. News of the video spread quickly through the media, leaving many people stunned by the series of coincidences. Some speculated that the murder had been predicted, but it was later revealed that the channel name and video title had been changed after Lisa's body was discovered, explaining the eerie coincidence. This has raised concerns that this could be a joke or an attempt to create another conspiracy theory. Meanwhile, the police worked day and night tirelessly to catch Lisa's murderer and solve the case as quickly as possible. At the time of the discovery, investigators had already questioned two brothers and a woman, all of whom denied any involvement in the murder. The three individuals claimed to have been at home at the time of the abduction, providing alibis for one another. According to their accounts, the older brother, Narigis, was asleep in his room while his wife was preparing dinner, and the younger brother was using the computer. Narigis also stated that around 8 p.m., he woke up and went to a gas station to buy pizza and cigarettes. The police were skeptical of their alibis, as it was possible that the three were covering for each other. DNA samples were collected, but initially, no evidence directly linked any of them to the murder. However, this was short-lived. Forensic experts were working diligently in the storehouse and on the farm, utilizing all available resources, and soon their efforts paid off. In the storehouse, a small office-like room was discovered with a large window overlooking the cafe. Upon investigation, experts found 15 semen stains on the walls and floor near the window, suggesting someone had been standing there, watching the cafe employees, including Lisa, and engaging in self-gratification. The semen samples were sent to the lab for analysis, and DNA profiles were quickly extracted. All 15 samples matched the DNA of 35-year-old Narigis. Additionally, the feces found in the storehouse also belonged to him. In the adjacent room, previously used for storing cow's milk, forensic experts noticed a pipe about 2 feet above the floor with a thick layer of dust, except for a small strip. The size of this strip matched the rope used to strangle Lisa. Blood was also found on the pipe, and DNA analysis confirmed it belonged to Narigis. On the floor beneath the pipe, a piece of the same rope was discovered. Experts analyzed it and found 2 DNA profiles, Lisa's and Narigis's. This discovery was an important clue for the police. This indicates that the rope used to kill Lisa was related to Narigis. A crucial piece of evidence was discovered in the room where Lisa's body was found, a hair belonging to her. Further investigation revealed DNA traces from Narigis on Lisa's jacket, leading the police to believe she was killed in that location. Police have been studying the evidence and using it to piece together what might have happened. Narigis had been watching the cafe for some time and waited for an opportunity to strike. When Lisa was alone in the parking lot, he approached her, possibly asking for directions or using another tactic to gain her trust. He may have then asked her to get into his car to enter the route into the GPS system. Given Lisa's kind nature and willingness to help others, it's likely she agreed to help him. Once she was in the car, Narigis taped her mouth shut and drove her to the storehouse. There, he bound her with a rope. According to medical experts, the killer's adrenaline rush at the scene may have caused him to lose control of his bodily functions, resulting in defecation on the floor. After Lisa's death, the perpetrator placed her body in the car and drove to the farm, discarding her belongings along the way. He then hid her body in the trailer locker, covering it with old clothes. The entire ordeal, from abduction to hiding the body, took the perpetrator less than an hour. Narigis maintains his innocence despite mounting evidence against him. His wife and younger brother were released due to lack of evidence and promptly returned to their home country, Lithuania. The trial preparations were intense, with Narigis claiming his DNA was found at the crime scene because he had worked in the storehouse for a long time. He also provided an alibi, which was corroborated by his wife and brother, although their credibility was questionable. This defense may work in court, but the finding of Narigis' DNA on Lisa's clothing suggests direct contact on the day of the murder. Furthermore, a witness reported seeing Narigis' car near the cafe around the time of Lisa's abduction, contradicting his alibi. The car was seen driving back and forth between the cafe and the farm. while Nerigis claimed to have been sleeping at home, according to his brother and wife. Months after Lisa's body was discovered, experts continued to analyze the evidence using advanced equipment. They found Nerigis' DNA on nearly all of Lisa's clothing, including her underwear. Given the high-profile nature of the case, investigators sought additional clues to solidify the evidence against Nerigis. As part of their investigation, they traveled to Lithuania to re-question Nerigis' wife and brother. Nerigis' wife maintained her initial alibi, claiming he was at home between 6 o'clock and 8 p.m. However, when detectives spoke with Nerigis' younger brother, they finally obtained the information they needed. After being presented with the evidence against Nerigis and the details of the crime, the younger brother revealed that Nerigis was not at home that evening. According to the younger brother, Nerigis returned around 7:30 p.m., covered in dirt, and immediately washed his clothes. When the police began questioning the residents and approached their house, Nerigis instructed his brother to tell police he was home at the time of the crime. Nerigis later explained that he was afraid of being wrongly accused due to his immigrant status and lack of alibi during the abduction. The younger brother initially believed Nerigis innocent, but after learning about the evidence, he realized this wasn't true. A month after murder, a large crowd attended Lisa's funeral, far exceeding the church's capacity of 130 people. To accommodate the mourners, organizers set up benches and large screens outside, allowing everyone to watch the ceremony. 4 months later, the trial began. Nerigis' lawyer argued that his client's DNA on Lisa's clothing could be explained by his work in the storehouse. However, the prosecution countered that this explanation didn't hold up, especially regarding Lisa's underwear. The only plausible way Nerigis' DNA could have ended up on her underwear was through direct contact. The lawyer failed to provide any evidence supporting Nerigis' innocence. At one point, lawyers suggested an alternative theory, that Nerigis' younger brother was the real killer. The lawyer failed to address the possibility of DNA manipulation during the trial, which lasted a month and resulted in Nerigis being found guilty of murder. At one point, lawyers suggested an alternative theory, that Nerigis' younger brother was the real killer. The lawyer failed to address the possibility of DNA manipulation during the trial, which lasted a month and resulted in Nerigis being found guilty of murder. He was subsequently sentenced to life imprisonment in a high-security Swedish prison, which offered relatively comfortable living conditions. Nerigis' lawyer attempted to appeal the verdict but was unsuccessful. In 2017, Nerigis made a surprising decision when he requested to be deported to a prison in Lithuania. Despite Lithuanian prisons being notoriously worse than Swedish ones, the court granted his request, probably because it would result in substantial cost savings for Swedish taxpayers. It did not take long to understand the reason behind Nerigis' decision. He appealed to the Lithuanian court and successfully had his sentence reduced from life to 15 years. However, this victory was short-lived, as the court later overturned the decision, reinstating his life sentence. Unfortunately for Nerigis, he was now stuck in a Lithuanian prison, with no chance of returning to the more comfortable Swedish prison. In August 2022, 5 years after his initial imprisonment, Nerigis has been transferred to another prison in Lithuania, where he encountered another life-threatening situation. During a block transfer, an inmate attacked Nerigis with a shank, causing severe injuries that ultimately led to his death on the way to the hospital. Regarding Nerigis' wife, the question of her involvement in the crime remains unclear. Although police believe it is highly unlikely that she was directly involved in the abduction or murder, they do not rule out the possibility that she may have been aware of her husband's actions and provided a false alibi to help him. If she had been directly involved, experts would have likely found her DNA on Lisa's clothing or belongings. Additionally, Nerigis' younger brother has raised suspicions. Cafe employees reported seeing 2 men, likely Nerigis and his younger brother, standing near the barn and watching the employees. However, the younger brother's DNA was not found in the barn or on Lisa's clothing, making his involvement in the murder unlikely. It is possible that the brothers were indeed observing the employees and discussing inappropriate topics, but only Nerges ultimately committed the crime. The case of Sarah Stern. Sarah Elizabeth Stern was born on March 24, 1997, in Neptune City, New Jersey, to Michael and Susan Stern. As their only child, Sarah received all their love and attention due to her mother's health issues, which made it impossible for her to have more children. Sarah grew up to be an outgoing, cheerful, and energetic kid. She was actively involved in school theater, photography, drawing, and sports, competing in swimming and softball. Her dream was to become an artist or designer, and she planned to attend a local college for arts. Tragedy struck in 2013 when Sarah's mother, Susan, passed away after a long battle with cancer. This devastating loss sent Sarah into depression, but she tried to support her grieving father, Michael, with whom she lived. They found comfort in their dog, Buddy, whom Sarah adored. Sarah's life was finally taking a turn for the better. After graduating from college, she planned to apply to a prestigious university in New York. Before that, she had always dreamed of traveling the world, with Canada being her top destination. She even considered living there for a while. Meanwhile, Michael Stern frequently traveled out of state for work, sometimes for weeks at a time. But he never worried about leaving his daughter Sarah alone at home because she was a responsible and independent young adult. And their town was known for being quiet and safe. However, during one of Michael's business trips in December 2016, trouble arose. On the night of December 3rd, around 2:30 a.m., a taxi driver called the police station to report an abandoned car on the Belmar Bridge along Highway 35. The area was deserted and rarely visited at night, making the empty vehicle immediately suspicious. The taxi driver, who was taking a shortcut home over the old bridge, had stopped to check if anyone needed help when he saw the car parked by the side of the road. Finding the car empty and no one around, he called the police, suspecting that the driver might have abandoned their car to jump into the water below, a tragic but not uncommon occurrence at that spot. The police found an abandoned silver sedan on a bridge with the keys still in the ignition, but no signs of blood or struggle. They suspected that the owner might have gone there to commit suicide by jumping into the river. After checking the car's ownership, they found it belonged to 85-year-old Lily Stern, who lived in the same town. When the officers visited Lily, they found her alive and well. She told them that she hadn't driven for years due to poor eyesight, and that her 19-year-old granddaughter, Sarah, used the car. Lily tried to call Sarah, but her phone was turned off. Lily then gave the officers her son's address, where Sarah lived, and mentioned that her father was away on a work trip. When the police went to the house, they found the back door open, which was concerning. After searching the house, they didn't find anything suspicious, except for a locked-in dog whining in one of the bedrooms. The house was in order, with no signs of struggle, blood, or evidence of an intruder. However, Sarah was nowhere to be found. Michael Stern rushed home on the first available flight after learning about the situation. When he arrived, the homeowner informed him that nothing was out of place or missing, including all of Sarah's personal belongings, such as her passport, driver's license, and mobile phone, which she always carried with her. The police shared their initial theory with Michael, suggesting that Sarah might have gone to the bridge intending to jump, and asked if he had noticed any signs of suicidal thoughts or self-harm attempts. Michael admitted that Sarah had struggled with depression after her mother's passing, but with support from family, friends, and her studies, she had recovered. She had ambitious plans for her future, including becoming a designer and traveling the world. Despite this, on the night of December 3rd, Sarah disappeared from her home, and her car was found abandoned on the bridge just hours later. These were the known facts, and the investigation now needed to focus on identifying who Sarah had been in contact with that day. what conversations she had, and who was the last person to see her. After Sarah Stern's disappearance, early witnesses came forward to reveal that she had spent most of December 2nd with her childhood friend, Liam McAtasney. As the last person to see her, Liam had valuable information that could help solve the mysterious case. The police quickly decided to interview him to gather details and piece together what had happened that day. When the police arrived at Liam's house, they met his mother, who told them that her son was sleeping after working a night shift. At the officer's request, she woke Liam up, who seemed puzzled by the situation. Upon learning about Sarah's disappearance, Liam was shocked and confirmed that they had indeed spent the previous day together. He agreed to go to the police station to give a statement. Liam and Sarah attended college together and decided to skip their last 2 lectures on Friday morning. After classes, they went back to her place, where they spent the day playing video games, chatting, and discussing their future plans. They left her house twice, once to get food from a nearby fast food restaurant, and again to visit a local supermarket around 7 p.m. Liam then left Sarah's house to start his night shift at a 24-hour store, and didn't see her again after that. When questioned about Sarah's mental state, Liam shared that she had been struggling with depression since her mother's death. She was torn between wanting to end her life or running away to start fresh. Liam also revealed that Sarah had difficulty communicating with her father and finding common ground with him. Although Liam didn't rule out the possibility that Sarah might have taken her own life, he mentioned that she had recently considered moving to Canada and had even exchanged some money for Canadian dollars. This was later confirmed when a small amount of Canadian currency was found in her bedside table drawer, although it wasn't enough to cover much. Preston Taylor, a close friend of Sarah's and her prom date, corroborated Liam's statement. He added that Sarah was struggling with depression and speculated that she might have either run away to Canada or jumped off the bridge. By the end of the conversation, Preston was overcome with emotion, expressing his deep affection for Sarah. The idea that Sarah had fled to Canada or elsewhere was quickly ruled out, as she didn't have her passport and couldn't have left the country. Investigators then focused on the possibility that Sarah might have jumped off the bridge, and a massive search effort was launched in the river. The strong current in the area complicated the search, as it could have carried a body far from the bridge. To aid in the search, divers were deployed, specialized equipment was used, and hundreds of volunteers, along with police, scoured the riverbanks for any signs of Sarah or her belongings. Liam and Preston were among the volunteers who actively helped search for Sarah. Unfortunately, the search efforts yielded nothing, and no sign of Sarah was found. As a result, the authorities decided to continue interviewing people who knew Sarah well, which led to the discovery of a strange inconsistency. Sarah's friends and classmates described her as being in great spirits, with none of them aware of any problems she had with her father. In fact, she often spoke about him in a warm and loving way. However, after she disappeared, her friends Liam and Preston seemingly took on the role of grieving relatives, garnering sympathy from many, but their behavior soon raised suspicions, as if they were acting for an audience. Despite only recently becoming close, the police decided to re-question Liam and Preston, noticing that their behavior was odd. During the re-questioning, Liam appeared deeply distressed when asked about his relationship with Sarah and Preston. Liam revealed that the 3 of them grew up together, attended the same school, and shared their deepest secrets and dreams. Preston had even taken Sarah to the prom, but their relationship was purely platonic. Liam considered Sarah like a sister, and they had even listed each other as siblings on social media. Sarah trusted him completely and had confided in him about the large sum of money her mother had left her, which was mostly stored in a safety deposit box. Sarah supposedly distrusted her father, who she thought wanted the money for himself, so she kept it in the bank with plans to withdraw it later to escape to Canada. However, Michael Stern disputed this story, providing a different account. According to Stern, his wife had been saving money for their daughter's future expenses, such as education, a wedding, or a home, since Sarah's birth. They stored the cash at home in a shoebox, which contained old and worn bills that didn't seem significant at the time. After his wife's passing, Stern gave the box of money to Sarah, advising her to deposit the old and worn bills into the bank. Sarah followed his advice, putting some of the money in her checking account for daily expenses and renting a safety deposit box for the rest. She intended to use the money to fund her university education and travel the world. Michael firmly denied any claim to the money for his own use. The discovery of the missing student's large sum of money led investigators to suspect that someone might have targeted her for financial gain. They decided to investigate her financial transactions, including her safety deposit box and bank records. The investigation revealed that Sarah had withdrawn a substantial amount of money from an ATM just a few days before she disappeared. She also visited her bank to withdraw cash from her safety deposit box. The detectives were surprised to find that Sarah was not alone during her bank visit. Bank surveillance footage showed that Liam accompanied her. This raised new questions, as Liam had failed to mention this visit during previous questioning. When asked about it, Liam hesitated before explaining that Sarah trusted only him and had asked for his accompaniment because she was afraid to carry a large amount of cash home alone. His explanation seemed reasonable, and his behavior appeared natural. A security camera at a house opposite the Stern residence captured footage of the street and neighboring yards. The footage showed that Liam stayed at Sarah's house until 7 p.m., then left for work and didn't return. The silver sedan was seen leaving the garage around 11 p.m. that night. About a month after Sarah's disappearance, an acquaintance named Anthony came to the police station with a disturbing story. Unaware of the events, Anthony had been out of town for several weeks. It turned out that Anthony had been classmates with Sarah, Liam, and Preston, and after graduation, pursued a passion for filmmaking, remaining in touch only with Liam, who shared his interest in cinema. About a month and a half before Sarah disappeared, Liam visited Anthony, and they spent an evening brainstorming ideas for a teenage horror movie. Liam came up with a plot where a girl tells a friend about a large sum of money she has, and the friend gains her trust before strangling her and dumping her body in a river. Anthony liked the idea, and they wrote a couple of pages of the script that night. Anthony later moved on to another project, forgot about the story, and left town to work as a camera assistant on a film shoot. When he returned, Liam unexpectedly called him, asking if the police had questioned him about anything. Anthony was surprised by the question and learned about Sarah's disappearance and the suspicious circumstances surrounding it. He decided to go to the police himself. The authorities instructed Anthony to have an open conversation with Liam and try to get him to confess. To do this, Anthony invited Liam to work on a project that required renting expensive camera equipment, knowing Liam's desire to be in a movie. Liam took the bait and suggested they meet in person to discuss the details. The police installed a hidden camera in Anthony's car and told him to carefully get Liam to confess when they met. When Liam got into the car, he looked around cautiously, then handed Anthony an envelope containing $2,000 in old bills, saying it was for the filming equipment. Anthony asked where Liam got the old money, and Liam hesitated before admitting that it belonged to Sarah, saying that he and Preston had taken it from her house because the dead don't need it. Although Liam didn't provide further details, his admission was enough evidence for the police to arrest him and Preston on suspicion of being accomplices. Preston agreed to cooperate with the authorities and made a deal with the prosecution. He admitted to helping his friend Liam cover up the evidence and dispose of Sarah's body, but claimed he did not participate in the murder itself. According to Preston, Liam had planned to steal Sarah's inheritance as soon as he found out about it. Sarah had kept the inheritance a secret, even from her best friend, but revealed it to Liam when she started planning a trip to Canada. Liam convinced her to withdraw the money from the bank and keep it in a home safe, and even borrowed a significant amount from her before the murder. When Sarah's father was away on a business trip, Liam put his plan into action. He promised Preston $25,000 to help him, but planned to do the actual killing himself. Liam convinced Sarah to withdraw the money, and then spent the day with her, waiting for the right moment to strike. He locked her dog in another room, approached Sarah from behind, and strangled her. The crime unfolding was more complicated than anticipated. Initially, Sarah, being athletic and strong, put up a fierce struggle until she lost consciousness. However, she would occasionally show signs of life, making it difficult for the perpetrator to be certain of her demise. It took around half an hour to confirm that Sarah had stopped breathing. After leaving Sarah's house, Liam went to work, at which point Preston entered the house through the back door, avoiding the camera's view. Preston dragged Sarah's body to the garage and cleaned up the room. A few hours later, Liam returned to Sarah's house, took a small safe from her room, and placed the body in the car. He drove away carefully to avoid being captured on the neighbor's camera. Liam met Preston at the bridge, where they disposed of the body in the river. They wiped down the steering wheel and drove back to Liam's house in Preston's car to divide the stolen money. However, they were disappointed to find only $110,000 in the safe, rather than the expected $100,000. Despite this, they decided not to spend the old bills immediately to avoid raising suspicion. Preston buried the safe in a local park, and they only used the money Sarah had withdrawn from her account. Despite confessing, Liam McAtasney denied involvement, trying to blame his friend instead. His lawyer claimed he was innocent, suggesting Taylor had acted alone. Since Sarah's body was never found and her disappearance was still unclear, there was a small chance she was still alive, having vanished without her belongings. However, a search of Liam's house found a key matching the buried safe, identified by Preston. The trial lasted over 2 years, but despite the lack of a body and Liam's denials, his guilt was proven through evidence. The script written months before the incident, the key found in his home, his recorded words in Anthony's car, and the old bills he provided all contributed to the verdict. Furthermore, fingerprints of both Preston and Liam were found inside the safe, and a colleague testified that Liam was absent from work that night, asking to be covered. Liam McAtasney was sentenced to life in prison without parole. His accomplice, who did not directly participate in the crime, received an 18-year sentence for obstructing justice and hindering the investigation. Preston Taylor will be eligible for parole in at least 15 years. The case of Kelly Cochran. Christopher Reagan was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, where he spent his early years. At the age of 20, he decided to serve his country and joined the military. Christopher committed himself to protecting the peace and safety of his fellow citizens. Christopher was stationed at a military base near Marquette, where he met Terry O'Donnell, a young teacher from Iron River. They lived in the same area and would often see each other around town as they spent more time together. They remained close friends for many years, but Christopher eventually decided to leave the military and move to Traverse City. Despite the distance between them, they continued to communicate regularly, and in December 2012, Christopher asked Terry to take their relationship to the next level. Terry and Christopher have known each other for many years. They find they have a lot in common. They decide to live together. Terry and Christopher choose Iron River as the perfect place for them to settle down. Christopher finds a job at a factory that makes parts for military ships, where he becomes a supervisor. However, after 2 years of living together, problems began to arise in their relationship. Unfortunately, they didn't make an effort to work through their issues, and it became clear that their relationship was coming to an end. Eventually, they made the difficult decision to go their separate ways. Despite the breakup, they were able to part on good terms and remain friends. After breaking up with Terry, Christopher realized that he couldn't live in her house anymore, so he decided to rent his own house. He felt that the town he lived in was too small, and he wanted a more dynamic city. Christopher began applying for jobs in various locations, sending out his resume in search of a new job. In October 2014, Christopher found a job in Asheville, North Carolina. As Christopher settled into his new life in Asheville, he contacted Terry on October 14th, telling her that he would be taking the day off tomorrow and looking forward to meeting Terry for a walk. However, on October 15th, Christopher did not contact Terry as planned. Terry became worried and tried calling him for several days, but he did not answer. She even contacted their mutual friends. 10 days after Christopher went missing, Terry filed a police report. The police accepted the report and told Terry that Christopher had probably moved to a new job in North Carolina and that he had started a new life and wanted to contact old friends. To avoid speculation, investigators conducted a thorough investigation. They identified Christopher's new workplace and contacted an employee to gather information. However, surprisingly, they found out that Christopher had not shown up to work in 10 days. The police then suspected that he might have been involved in an accident, given his frequent solo outdoor trips. The search for Christopher led investigators to the local woods, where he was known to frequent. Trained search dogs were brought in to aid in the effort. But no signs of Christopher were found. Terry, concerned that Christopher may have been injured or in an accident, suggested searching his former apartment. The investigators agreed and visited the apartment, where they were met with a scene of disarray. Clothes and belongings were scattered across the floor, and closets were left open. Initially, they thought that Christopher might have simply been messy, but Terry disputed this, stating that Christopher was typically neat and organized. The detectives started to suspect a connection between the recent events and the crime. After investigating Christopher's home, they decided to expand their search. A thorough search of the neighborhood led them to find Christopher's car 8 miles outside Iron River, near the city limits. The police found it unusual that the car was left there, suggesting it might have been abandoned unintentionally. After forcing open a door, they searched the interior and found nothing suspicious, only ordinary clothing. However, one of the officers noticed a small yellow piece of paper on the front passenger seat with a detailed route written on it. They decided to follow the route to see where it led. Although the paper did not specify an exact address, the directions were clear. According to Terry, Christopher, although familiar with the city of Iron River, did not know the local street names, so he wrote down the directions using landmarks such as bus stops and gas stations. Terry deduced from the detailed notes that this was Christopher's first time visiting the location. The detectives followed the route outlined on the paper, which led them to a nearby town and a specific house mentioned in Christopher's notes. When they arrived, they knocked on the door to gather information in Christopher's connection to the location. A man named Jason Cochran answered the door, and his wife Kelly was there. The police explained that they were investigating Christopher's disappearance and had found a lead pointing to this address. Terry, who worked with Christopher at the same factory, revealed that they were co-workers. She had tried to contact Christopher via text message in mid-October but had not received a response. Investigators found a note in Christopher's car that showed the route to Jason's house. Although confused, Jason and Kelly agreed to cooperate with the investigation. After a short interrogation without any further clues, the detectives left Jason Cochran's house. Detectives then interviewed Christopher's co-workers at the factory. A supervisor shared that Christopher had been having an affair with Kelly Cochran, which was an open secret among employees. This revelation sparked interest, leading investigators to re-question the Jason and Kelly. During reinterrogation, Kelly confessed to her relationship with Christopher. However, She claimed that she could not reveal this information earlier because her husband Jason was present. According to Kelly, Jason agreed to her affair. However, Christopher's colleagues disputed Kelly's story. They claimed that Jason did not approve of Kelly's affair. When Jason was later brought in for questioning, he completely denied approving of Kelly's affair. His strong objection to Kelly's infidelity aroused suspicion and made him a suspect. The investigation into Christopher's disappearance was ongoing, but the lack of concrete evidence made it impossible to determine whether Kelly was involved. As a result, Kelly and Jason were released from the police station. The case remained unsolved for 5 months. In March 2015, a new investigator, Detective Jeremy Ogden from the Hobart Police Department, took over the case. Jeremy Ogden began by thoroughly examining the Jason Cochran family's background. Kelly and Jason had met in high school and started living together soon after graduation. They had distinct personalities. Kelly was outgoing, sociable, and talkative, while Jason was quiet and reserved. He rarely initiated conversations, only responding to questions asked of him. Despite their differences, they decided to get married. After the wedding, they started a business together, providing swimming pool maintenance services. The business was modest, but it provided a decent income for they. Jason handled most of the pool maintenance work, but the constant stress and physical strain took a toll on his health. He began to experience back problems and felt increasingly heavier every day. Eventually, he realized he could no longer continue running the business. Kelly then took over the responsibilities of running the business, hoping that Jason would soon recover and return to his duties. However, his condition continued to worsen, and medical treatments were not providing the desired relief. Kelly searched for alternative ways to help her husband recover. During her search, Kelly discovered a plant that offered hope for Jason's recovery. However, the plant was banned in their home state, making it inaccessible to them. To access the treatment, Kelly and Jason decided to relocate to Michigan, specifically Iron River Township, in 2014. Jason consulted his doctor and received a prescription for pain medication. Around the same time, in early 2014, Jason's wife, Kelly Cochran, started working at a factory that manufactured parts for U.S. warships. Kelly and Jason moved to the area. Kelly and Jason worked at the same factory where Christopher Reagan worked. Christopher and Kelly found common topics of conversation and over time became close friends. This friendship was especially important to Christopher. After gathering evidence, prosecutors presented their case to a Michigan judge to obtain a search warrant for Kelly and Jason's home. The judge granted the warrant, and on March 6th, a team of investigators searched Kelly and Jason's home, carefully searching for any evidence related to Christopher's disappearance. The only significant discovery was a book written by Jason. He used a pseudonym in the world of video games. The title of the work was ordinary, but its content was horrifying. In this dark and violent book, Jason described the murder of the person who had harmed him. After reading the book, the detectives noticed a character who bore an uncanny resemblance to Christopher. This raised suspicions about Jason, leading them to wonder if he had been inspired by the real-life crimes he had committed. 3 weeks later, a second search of Jason's home was conducted. The police hoped to find crucial evidence that had been missed in the first search. However, when they arrived at the Jason's home, they found it empty, with no cars in sight. Repeated attempts to knock on the door went unanswered. It was later discovered that Kelly and Jason had fled the state shortly after the initial search, moving to Indiana. Their sudden departure left investigators concerned. Michigan police, needing a DNA sample, asked Indiana police for help. Indiana police went to Jason's new home, where they had just moved. The investigation into Christopher Reagan's disappearance ran out of clues. Time passed, and on February 22, 2016, Hobart, Indiana, police received a frantic call from Kelly Cochran, who tried to explain that her husband, Jason, was not breathing. When paramedics arrived, Kelly was in a panic. It was clear that Jason was beyond saving. He was sitting in a chair, his face burning like fire, as if he had overheated. The doctors officially confirmed Jason's death. His body was then sent for a thorough forensic examination. Meanwhile, Kelly was handed over to a police patrol and taken to relatives who lived nearby. To piece together what happened, investigators thoroughly searched Jason's new home. During the search, a police officer found a syringe at the foot of Jason in his wife's bed. Initially, investigators believed Jason's death was due to substance abuse. The medical examiner's report showed that Jason had multiple drugs in his system, but Jason's death was due to strangulation, confirmed by bruises on his neck and face. The focus of the investigation then shifted to Kelly Cochran, who appeared to be connected to both crimes. She was now considered the prime suspect in not only Christopher's disappearance, but also her husband's murder. On February 23, 2016, Kelly Cochran was summoned to the police station to answer questions about her husband's death. Under direct questioning and pressure from investigators, Kelly denied any involvement in her husband's death and Christopher's disappearance. She claimed that Jason's death was due to a drug overdose. Months later, investigators still lacked concrete evidence to convict Kelly. During the investigation, Detective Jeremy Ogden met Walter Hammerman, a close friend of Jason's. Kelly informed Walter of Jason's death, who then contacted the police. Walter shared his insights with investigators, saying he did not believe Jason's death was caused by drugs. He claimed that Jason had used herbs to relieve his chronic back pain. In March of the previous year, Jason confided in Walter about his concerns. Jason and Kelly were asked to go to Indiana because the Iron River police suspected them of being involved in Christopher's disappearance. This had a significant impact on Jason, leading to depression. Walter observed a notable change in Jason's behavior, with Kelly increasingly taking control over his life. Jason appeared to be constantly anxious, and he began to avoid social gatherings as soon as Kelly returned from work. As the investigation progressed, this information became a vital link. After the medical examiner determined that Jason had died from strangulation, Detective Ogden devised a plan to pressure Kelly into revealing the truth about Jason's death. Walter, Jason's friend, was used as bait to lure Kelly into a trap. On March 12, 2016, Walter, under police surveillance and equipped with a listening device, called Kelly. He told her that Jason had given him a letter containing important information before his death, with the condition that it be sent to the police if anything happened to him. However, Kelly surprisingly asked Walter to drop the idea, which caught both Walter and the police off guard. Despite this development, the detective still lacked direct evidence to build a case. In the weeks following her initial questioning, Kelly was subjected to multiple interrogations by investigators trying to uncover the truth. Despite their efforts, she continued to deny any wrongdoing. However, on April 26, 2016, it became apparent that Kelly Cochran had evaded the scrutiny of investigators and was on the loose. Detectives joined forces with police officers from Iron River and Hobart to launch a federal manhunt for Kelly Cochran. Walter Hammerman, who had cooperated with the police, was shocked and frightened by the news. He feared that Kelly might never be caught and could potentially harm him again. As the search for Kelly intensified, her phone went off, leading investigators to believe she was deliberately concealing her location. Kelly evaded police and fled to Wingo, Kentucky, over 6 hours away from Hobart. A detective notified the local authorities to exercise extreme caution if they found Kelly. Police in Wingo identified Kelly at her cousin's house on April 28. Understanding that she posed a potential danger and was prone to attempting to escape, officers rapidly proceeded to the residence, avoiding advance warnings that afternoon and detaining Kelly on site. During the interview, Kelly revealed new details. That Kelly was deeply in love with Jason and wanted to leave the city life behind to start over with him. On October 13, 2015, Jason discovered Kelly's infidelity. Jason made a dark pact. The adulterer was obliged to kill his lover if the affair was exposed. Kelly claimed she had never taken this pact seriously, thinking it was just a joke. However, Jason was resolute and warned Kelly that if she didn't fulfill her end of the bargain, he would take matters into his own hands. Despite her reservations, Kelly reluctantly helped Jason commit a heinous crime. The next evening, October 14, 2015, Christopher arrived at Kelly's house, eager to spend a romantic evening with Christopher while her husband was away. Kelly had planned a fun evening, complete with dinner and intimacy. Kelly and Christopher had dinner together and then went upstairs to the house. Then Jason suddenly appeared. Jason rushed into the bedroom, holding a rifle. Christopher immediately realized that he was in danger. Without hesitation, Jason shot Christopher in the head, killing him. Jason and Kelly then dragged the body down to the basement, where they began to dismember it with a hacksaw. Jason and Kelly cut Christopher's limbs and head off his body and placed the remains in several garbage bags. They then dumped the bags in the woods near Crystal Falls. To avoid suspicion, they drove Christopher's car away from the house. Kelly and Jason thoroughly cleaned the house to remove any evidence of the crime. Kelly was consumed by a deep-seated anger towards her husband, whom she blamed for ruining her chance at happiness with he she truly loved, Christopher. She couldn't forgive her husband for depriving her of the opportunity to be with him, and the pain and loss she felt lingered every day. Kelly's resentment towards her husband eventually turned to hatred, and she knew she could no longer live peacefully with him. An opportunity for revenge presented itself on February 22, 2016, when her husband complained of back pain. Kelly convinced him to let her give her an injection, but she deliberately gave him a dose that killed him. However, the medication didn't work as planned, and her husband was still breathing. Kelly then suffocated him by covering his mouth and nose with her hands. To ensure he was dead, she also squeezed his neck, which explained the bruises found on his body. After confessing to the crime, Kelly cooperated with the police to help them locate Christopher's remains. On May 18, 2016, Detective Jeremy Ogden led a team to a remote area near Crystal Falls to search for Christopher's body. A canine unit picked up the scent and led the team to a small hill, where they found a human skull with bullet holes, indicating a homicide. The team believed they had discovered Christopher's remains. Further examination of the scene yielded additional evidence, including a .22 caliber bullet, a broken firearm. Dental records later confirmed the victim's identity. This breakthrough finally solved the case that had haunted investigators for 2 years. Kelly Cochran was formally charged with the murders of Christopher and Jason Cochran in April 2016. On February 13, 2017, Kelly was brought to court in Michigan to face charges. The prosecutor argued that Kelly was the mastermind behind the crime and that she had planned and executed. The prosecution presented strong evidence, including Kelly's own confession, to support their case. However, Kelly told a different story. She claimed that her husband, Jason, was the one who had planned and committed the crime. According to Kelly, Jason was jealous and had been abusing her. On the day of the crime, Jason allegedly hid in the basement and surprised Kelly and Christopher, then shot Christopher in a fit of rage. Kelly also claimed that Jason had forced her to help him dismember the body by threatening to harm her. Despite Kelly's new version of events, the jury found her guilty of premeditated murder after deliberating for 3 hours. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. After being sentenced, Kelly Cochran was sent directly to Crown Point Correctional Facility in Ionia, Michigan, where she is currently serving her sentence.